You doing, James?
Man, I'm awesome, man. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, doing good. Stage two of the Stage Clear podcast. We got that name. We're coming through now. We can actually talk about it because we had to workshop it for a while after we stopped
Yeah, yeah.
recording
I
yesterday.
really think yeah, I think it really fits perfectly for us, man. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah,
Very appropriate.
I've heard different things about it. I was a little reserved, had some other options. We actually had to I had to search up different options we had and oh, that's taken, that's taken. So many good things were taken, but I think we kind of found something nice here. So
Yeah, yeah.
sweet,
Yeah, yeah.
man.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love it. I feel like it's very simple, straight to the point, but it's so appropriate.
Sure. So before we get too into it, I'm Tim. You're James, and what you got going on? What are you doing? How can the people find you?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Instagram, I'm actually known as Thugs for Hire. It's an inside joke in regards to why I have that name. So maybe we'll unpack that one day, or maybe this episode. Facebook, I'm James Carr or James Winston Carr. Feel free to hit me up. I love having new friends, discussions, and stuff like that. And I also have a YouTube as well. And I just call it Unique Perspectives. I think I'm pretty comfortable with that name, Unique Perspectives. So I'm trying to really try to grow that channel. Just, I've always been somebody that I really love to communicate with people. So just really trying to have a really solid, truthful message, honest message about life and things like that, morality, ethics, and stuff like that from a Christian perspective.
Absolutely, yeah. We're gonna have all the links to that stuff in the description, as you can see. We might throw a banner up there, James's thing, as he's talking
Nice.
about it. But yeah, okay. So we can go right into it. I know these kind of get a little long, but
Let's do
start up
it.
with weeks. How was your week, James? What did you do?
You know what? Yeah, my week has been very interesting. I think one of the most interesting aspects really was just yesterday. I was working in the city of Venice here in California, and I had four classes, and with my last class, it's a
Real
private
quick,
class.
some
So
some background. What do you do?
yes, so one of the jobs I have is primary job really is working with children. I do sports, primarily soccer, and I go to different locations in the Los Angeles area and also Orange County area with a soccer company. So yeah, it's really nice. It's really cool. It's something that I mean I've been working with children for a little over 20 years now in the preschool setting. So I've had this specific job for maybe 10 years or so. So it's really been rewarding.
Nice.
Um, yeah, yeah, but yeah, I was actually working in the city of Venice, and I think I was ending the class finally, and we do like this song for the to end the class, for the children. And when I was done, I started to, say goodbye to everyone and start cleaning up some of the things. And one of the parents, or maybe the one of the friends of the parents, said, Coach James, you are doing the Lord's work. Like it was the first time this lady came. Yeah, yeah, and it just really kind of reminded me, like, man, sometimes every now and again, I forget that, um, whatever it is we do, we're supposed to be doing it unto the Lord and not for men. That's a Bible verse in, I believe, First Corinthians.
Yeah.
And so yeah. So I'm just, I was reminded, like, even though I'm just running around with the kids and we're kicking a soccer ball and the goals, and we are ambassadors of Christ, even when we're not in that per se, church setting, but even when
Everyday
we're,
lives, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was a nice reminder. It was a nice reminder
That's
to keep that in
actually,
mind.
yeah, that's pretty funny. I usually will kind of bring up that phrase anytime, just as kind of jokingly sometimes, but in earnest, like you're doing God's work. Oftentimes when playing football, we have athletic trainers that bring around water and stuff. So if we're dog tired, I would just go, "You're doing God's work, ma'am," and then just start chugging some water.
I
Um,
love it. I love it. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. But go on and continue.
Uh, yeah, yeah. So it was just a nice reminder that yeah, just to keep that in mind. That whatever it is I am doing, I am an ambassador of Christ, and it was awesome to just be reminded of that. I also have, my youngest brother. I'm actually really close to. We probably exchange Instagram audio messages, like I'm gonna say regularly on a daily basis.
Oh
Even
wow.
if it's just a few times. Yeah, yeah. So we're really close. And just this morning, actually, he and I were communicating, and he was learning that some of the things that I've been sharing with him about, human beings inheriting this sinful nature, we're sort of like trapped in this cycle over and over again, doing the same stuff, unless God really steps in and intervenes, and we're changed. But he is realizing that he's jumping from different relationships, and it's always the same results, and sometimes it's bad. It's sometimes it ends up really bad actually. The police are involved and all the other stuff. It's sometimes it's really bad, and he's realizing that he is going through this cycle. So I was just telling him that Jesus did say that those who practice sin are a slave to sin.
Hmm.
It's like you're locked into it. And you can try all these different things like therapy or music or sex or whatever. You're not going to sever ties with that. It's a spiritual issue. It's not. It's not a mental or emotional issue. It's a spiritual issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty profound.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
just observing, all I guess all of our faults, and but there's one thing to like, what do you not like about yourself? What do you want to improve? But because of that sinful nature, we can give ourselves passes or not see something as bad. So it's good that we have a moral kind of law, God's law, and something good standard to live up to, and presets that are virtually agreed and everything. I think that's really great.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's something that I just think is amazing that God has given us the privilege of having His moral guidelines in the Bible. So we have something to judge even ourselves from, and the Apostle
Yeah,
Paul also writes that we're to also evaluate ourselves and see if we are in the faith as well. So it's important to even reflect and say, okay, is my behavior reflecting a changed life?
yeah,
Or am I just pretty much the same person and I just adopted religion? So there's a difference.
for sure. Anything else you watch in your week, or play, or anything that you wanted to talk about?
You know what? Goodness. I mean, I was gonna. I guess we are transitioning into maybe entertainment a little bit. Or
Yeah, no, we
not
don't got
just
to
yet.
stick to the transitions too much. I guess, yeah, just a quick word of like what you did, and then we can go right into it, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna say maybe 3 weeks ago, the Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City uh, Blu-ray movie was available at Target and all these other
Nice,
stores.
nice.
So yeah, yeah. And so I actually bought myself a copy
Excuse
like
me.
last year.
Excuse me.
Yeah, yeah. The day it came out, like 3 weeks ago or so, I picked it up, and then I picked some family members I knew who appreciated the movie a copy as well, and so I eventually dropped it off to them like 3 days later when I found out, somebody was there to pick it up, and so I checked in with them recently to ask them, what was their opinion about the movie and everything, and they really enjoyed it just as I enjoyed it, So this is separate from the previous Resident Evil films. By what was it, Robert Rodriguez, or I forgot, not his name. That's not his name.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Mila
Jovovich,
Jovovich.
Mila
Yeah,
Jovovich,
yeah,
and
her husband,
Paul Anderson, right?
her husband. There you go, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, these are separate from and
Those,
yes,
yeah, okay.
yeah, right, yeah.
The
So
older
but
ones.
yeah, yeah, and I enjoy them for what they are, But it's just nice to see um, more of a more accurate characterization of the story and the characters and everything. That's a little bit more closer to what the actual story was of the Resident Evil series. So it's actually really nice to see this actually. And I
Yeah,
don't know if you've seen it, but I would definitely recommend you eventually get to it if you can rent it or buy it or just
might
nice
have
to
to.
see. Yeah, yeah, it's really nice to actually see it being done. A little bit more closer to what the game is.
Yeah, you're gonna have to send me that the name of that. I'll check that out after for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. I will. Yeah, man. How's things on your end?
So there's a couple things to talk about. I'm pretty sure I have a timeline in my head, right? Because like we recorded and then things happened, and I'm pretty sure we didn't talk about this last time, but so yeah,
Okay.
we went through the week. It was a good week, Pretty got work done pretty swiftly throughout the week. Had some time to really delve into some things that came out. One thing we did watch was I introduced the wife to the movie Inglorious Bastards. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I haven't, but I don't. I've had two people at least, and it may have been one of them. Could have been you recommended it to me.
That
This is
movie
Quentin
is
Tarantino, right?
yep, yep.
Okay.
One of his best. It's phenomenal. World War
Really?
II film, hilarious.
Okay.
Really good themes and everything. Great acting. So yeah, I can't
Okay.
wait to get into that a little bit later. And then yeah, Elden Ring came out this week. I know I talked about that a little bit last week. Um, so I ended up buying the game and streamed a little bit of it. The day after it came out. Dove really hard into it. It was really fun. Game's awesome.
Okay.
Game's great. Um,
That's cool. A lot of my gaming channels are like everyone's talking about it right now.
yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, for
Oh.
sure. So we can get right into it then. Entertainment. What do you talked about the Resident Evil movie, right?
Yeah. Welcome to Raccoon City, Resident Evil. Yeah, I mean, I actually have the Blu-ray
There you go.
with me now.
So
I
it's
don't know if you
not
can see.
animated. That's the one that just came out like this past year then.
Yeah. Literally, it was the same week of Thanksgiving, 2021. So I remember going to the movie theater like in the morning to see it. I think it was the day before like Thanksgiving, or I went to go see it, and then I seen like the Eternals that same day.
Oh wow, double feature.
So I kind of so I kind of mapped it out that way, and yeah, it was a while since I went to the theater, so I was like, let me treat myself for the day, and
Yeah.
but yeah. But it was nice. It was nice to actually see a film that actually had that same tone. And I know that you and I have talked about the Resident Evil remake part two, and I know you're still going through that.
I
So
am.
I
Yep.
don't know if you care for certain details, but yeah, but the movie kind of stays a little closer to um, that perspective of the Resident Evil series. So it actually found a way to kind of implement the first game and the
The
second
second
game, which
game.
is specifically more so the remake. Yeah, and yeah, it was very interesting how that was done. Um, so yeah, I really just loved it because it just seemed like it was nice to see all these different characters, like I said, as they are supposed to have been, represented, and in the other versions of the movies with the Paul Anderson
Paul Anderson
films. Yeah,
films. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because later on they would kind of squeeze in these characters, but the environment was so different. They kind of made it a post-apocalyptic type of thing eventually. It was kind of like it kind of really
Yeah.
defeated
It,
the
it
purpose.
turned Hollywood and wasn't really like correlated with the game at all after a certain point.
Oh yeah. I mean, I did like Resident Evil 2, which was sort of like Nemesis version, um, in this Paul Anderson, and so that was the closest to the actual game. But yeah, it was just. But this one, I really just enjoy that you actually get to see the mansion, you get to see the police station, you get to see a lot of these people that you see in the game, the people that you play, and so you even see like certain perspectives of, like even Albert Wesker. You see him go start as someone a little bit more ignorant about what's going on to
Yeah.
you see his transition actually in this film, um, of him kind of becoming more incorporated with his own motives and secrets and things like that. So it's actually very interesting. In fact, I would almost say his character is most intriguing because you start off with this guy he's like one of the team,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it's very very interesting. And then you kind of see this transition throughout the film where you see him
Become
going
like one
into
of the
this great.
villains.
Yeah. So it's nice, and they kind of give you that opportunity that they kind of do like the Marvel thing where you have that last scene where it kind of like shows you there's going to be more
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
deal.
End credit scene thing.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I really enjoyed it a lot, and I have to say, I'm probably gonna watch it, maybe even watch it later on today. I just
You liked it that
it's
much?
just really nice to. Yeah, it was just really nice to, and you have to understand, like, for a lot of us, when Resident Evil showed up like 20 some odd years ago, like we just we flipped because it was like the first time we seen something like this done, and then they just kept giving us more and more and more like
You talking about the
side
games or the
stories.
movies?
Well, starting out with the games,
Yeah.
this is really gave us what we wanted, and then they just gave us more of what we wanted, and they always really. I feel like the first few games they did a good job with keeping it very close to the story. Like the first game, it's like this team in this mansion, and they're trying to figure out what happened, and then
Yeah.
you're discovering all these secrets of what actually took place and the experimentations. And then the second game was almost like um, it happened like probably a few months after the events of, so it was like very close to the timeline. So they kept the same tone, and it was a little bit better because it's like different location, different characters, and then like the third one, Nemesis, came out, and it was close to the timeline as well. So yeah, it was really well done. But it's nice to see like a film that actually explored that, the right way. So I don't want to talk too much about it. I don't want to spoil it. I don't know
No,
if
yeah,
people
that's
are.
that's fine. We don't gotta do a spoiler section, but as far as like
Yeah.
video game movies as a whole, there's really like a bad stigma of where they're either not good
Yes,
or they're
yes,
not accurate to the source material or both, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it seems proven that it's kind of hard to transition that media from video game to film accurately, or vice versa, because there are a bunch of video games that were slapped on just out of nowhere a year after the movie came out, right? Just to profit off the movie's name or something. And most of
Mm-hmm.
those aren't really, too. No one's really like talking on home about them, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So there's also the Anderson films that you were talking about. It's kind of they kind of just took a different turn and wasn't that's why this one's kind of so relevant and to you and to anyone who's a true Resident Evil fan is like it returns to the roots and kind of is more accurate to it. Uh, I heard it still wasn't the best film, but that's from like
Hmm.
critics and everything, and those can like, go either way. I feel like I enjoy your opinion more because you're actually someone who cares deeply about the franchise and everything, and has seen almost all the movies, even the animated ones. So you can have a good opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting you say that because I remember years ago I was, and that could have been, I don't know, mid-teens, late teens, but I remember this game came out, and I don't know if it was for Genesis or what it was, um, but me and one of my relatives, we were playing this game relentlessly. We just loved this game. We were just tearing this game up, and I remember eventually, I was subscribed to like getting uh, some video game magazines in the mail every month, and so they reviewed the game and said it was like one of the most awful things that ever, you know, came on the face of the earth. And yeah, yeah, and I think for the first time I realized that yes, there are people that are going to be critics and people who are considered, they have these very I don't know, supposedly balanced understandings of what we should be looking for in a movie or in a TV show or in a video game. But I realized right at that moment that that's not completely accurate. That we have literally like 7 billion people in this world, and we're not all going to think the same way. You
Yeah,
know, like for me, yeah. So yeah, I did hear that this more recent Resident Evil movie didn't really get that much traction. Not too many people cared for it, but I noticed that I've been keeping in contact with a lot of fans like myself, and we're all very satisfied with it. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm hoping there's another one involved eventually. At least give us another one. But yeah, it was really nice. It was really nice just to,
and
But no, I like that, and I appreciate
you
what you
said it
said.
was a different director.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah. I believe Johannes. Let's see, I have his name here. Yeah, Johannes Roberts. And I
okay.
think he did deep something related to the survival in the sea or something like that. I forgot what it's called when the
Deepwater
shark gets
Horizon.
you. Something like that. It's something like that. It was one of those films. I forgot which film it was. Two ladies stranded at sea and there's sharks around, and I don't know if they're out at sea, and I forgot the film. But
It's
yeah,
all
no,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I really liked. It was really nice. It was really nice just to because I feel like one of the things that the Resident Evil games did over time to kind of like I don't know, it kind of lost its horror aspect or whatever and it kind of went into like straight action based, and it was still really good, but
Yeah, it was
there's a
just a
lot of it we
different
missed. I
format.
mean, yeah, yeah. So a lot of us we missed that. We missed the horror
Yeah,
aspect, and so I feel like the Paul Anderson films went straight into that. Like they kind of would sprinkle a little horror in there. You'd have a character or two uh, once a movie or so walking around, in this dark hallway, and but most of it was one big adrenaline rush, and that's what happened to a lot of the games. So it's nice to see that the games, starting with like Resident Evil 7 and a lot of the other ones, they're returning back to the horror roots. Like people are like,
yeah,
wow, we're responding more to that, and I feel like this movie did the same thing. This new one is it gave us it gave us that again.
that's good
It was pretty nice. Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. Yeah,
for sure.
very satisfied.
Um, was there anything else you had brought up, or was it?
I mean, I do want to check out the Uncharted movie. It actually came out this
No,
weekend.
it did.
Uh-huh. Yes, Tom Holland, man,
Oh
Mark
wow.
Wahlberg.
Yeah, Mocky
Yeah,
Mock.
yeah, right, right.
um,
Yeah, so I'm actually, I'm very eager to. I want to see that. I haven't seen it yet, but
okay. Yeah, I know as far as like video games movies, I know that one, the Resident Evil one came out, and then I know Assassin's Creed came out a while ago, and then Monster Hunter was actually a Paul Anderson film. And
that's right.
I'm a huge fan of Monster Hunter, and I did not enjoy that film, but we can talk about that too. But yeah, so as far as like video game films overall, they're just not. It's hard to not nail them down. So this Uncharted series, I'm not familiar with it. It's a PlayStation exclusive series, but you've played some of the games.
Yes, in fact, I own all of them.
Oh wow.
I own all of them. Yeah, so there's four core games, and then there's like one side game. So I haven't actually beaten the side game, which is like two different characters from that same universe.
Yeah.
And I believe one of those characters actually makes an appearance uh, in the current movie. So you see this lady dealing with like the main character who's a male. So that's very interesting. And to my understanding, the movie is supposed to be more of a prequel
Okay.
to, yeah, yeah. So you kind of see the foundation of, this character and how he becomes interested in just kind of pursuing, treasures and adventure and stuff like that. How he's kind of meet up with his associate, Sully and played by Mark Wahlberg. So it's really, I'm actually very interested in seeing it. Not as much as like the Batman,
Oh, okay. That
in a
does
week
come
from
out
now.
soon
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
A week
That's like
from
a
now.
week from now. Yeah, so really looking forward to that. But yeah, Uncharted. I feel like this might be one of those few movies that because they have like a decent actor, they have people that are actually working with Naughty Dog that made Uncharted, that worked with them in the film. So they're making sure like it's actually going to be good.
Okay.
So you have so you have a good decent director team. It's so I think it's going to be different, and it's the same thing with the Last of Us TV show. I think they're going to wrap up by the summer of this year, and sometime next year we're actually going to get the show
That's
when
good.
it's released. But yeah, but again, they have actually worked very closely with Naughty Dog that made The Last of Us. So I'm expecting there to be a difference when it comes to the quality. It's not going to be like in the past with all these other
Yeah. Well,
video
let's
games.
hope, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I think they're on the right track. That's the best way to go. Is like, hey, everybody, all you guys that made this game, come help us.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like, yeah, like you can't mess up after that. So that
So
doesn't happen very often.
so Uncharted, this movie, is it fair to say it's the National Treasure 3 that we've been waiting for all these years? Is that a fair comparison? Where's
You
Nick
know,
Cage? How
I
much
don't,
of a role does he have?
I don't suspect that. I don't suspect that. And what I really like though is I think because Tom Holland has this this history of being a gymnast and things like that, and even ballet, to my understanding.
Oh
So
wow.
when he did the whole Spider-Man thing, he was like the perfect candidate. Like
Yeah.
he had the look, he had the voice, but he also had some basic talents that he can actually do things himself in the costume. Simple flips and very good with balance. So I feel like with Uncharted, that's going to work out very well for him as well. And I heard in one of his interviews that he was mentioning that it's nice to actually play a character that's doing this stuff and he doesn't have superpowers. Like it's based on like real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something I'm actually eager to see. But yeah, they definitely because they know he's capable of that stuff. And honestly, it's yeah, you mentioned you haven't really played the Uncharted games, right?
No, I
Um,
haven't.
okay, but yeah, I mean, your main character, you really get thrown in a lot of crazy situations where it just seems like the guy's always getting himself into trouble, and he can simply try to look for a treasure in a certain place in the world, and there's always like other agents and other organizations that are trying to find the same thing and fighting him, and so it's very fascinating,
Is it
very
like an
fascinating.
Indiana Jones thing or?
Okay, okay, I would say it's very closely to
Yeah.
that. It's very closely to, yeah, yeah, very closely to that.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, I would definitely, yeah. Yeah, yeah, but what I like is you almost see like this character's determination that almost like trumps over these organizations and these groups that are trying to really outdo him. So you see that in every game, and then of course like the sense of humor from these video games, it really causes the game to kind of stand out. Because I don't know how you if you I think you said you played The Last of Us one, right?
No, I haven't. I saw a little bit. I saw the opening scene, which was really,
Okay.
good, dramatic.
Okay. So one of the traits I'm going to say that Naughty Dog has presented to us in their video games, and I'm going to say primarily with The Last of Us games and Uncharted, is they have this ongoing dialogue that's always happening. So it's like real life, you know. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
it's very easy for us to play Resident Evil, and we're running around a hall back and forth trying to do puzzles, and your character is completely quiet until they I don't know until they meet another character that they can communicate with. You
Okay.
know. Yeah, yeah. But with Uncharted, even if they're by themselves, it's almost like the characters are speaking to themselves all the time, and then they're sometimes almost giving us hints. Maybe you'll go to a door and you'll try to open it, and you'll say, "Oh man, looks like it needs a key."
Okay.
And
Yeah,
so,
I know what you're talking
and so
about.
I need to look for a key.
Yeah, that's
And
good game design.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And but they do such a good job. And then with a lot of these two franchises, it's almost like there's always like often two characters with one another. You play a character, and then there's some type of AI system, and you see them having a dialogue with each other. And in some instances, it'll be a third person joining, or maybe you switch off with one partner, and then somebody else is joining you. And there's always a very interesting dialogue happening, and so it really keeps you involved in what's happening. It's very difficult to kind of start drifting from what's happening. So it's really, the sense of humor and all that stuff is. I feel like it's going to translate into the film as well.
Got you. Got you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, as one of the things I was talking about was Inglorious Bastards, like we had said earlier, Quentin Tarantino film. So how many? I guess how familiar are you with Tarantino and his films and kind of that universe?
I mean, I'm going to say, maybe five or six of his films I've seen that I can, so I'm familiar with his work.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
So
I
hyper
always thought,
violent, right?
yeah,
Typically.
yeah, always, oh yeah, the dialogue. Yeah, I think the last film I seen of his was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I thought was. Have you seen that?
I haven't. No. I
Oh,
heard
you
about
have
it.
to.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, you have to. Yeah, you have to. You have
I'm over here watching the classics when there's new stuff, new good stuff.
to. Yeah, you have to. You have to see that. I have to say he's one of those filmmakers that he's. I don't know. I feel like other filmmakers they sort of evolve
Mhm.
in a way, and sometimes it can work, and sometimes it doesn't work as they evolve. But him, I feel like he really keeps it pretty straightforward with all of his films.
Yeah, just consistent, and really
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, but I had me and my wife we talked about this before, and I've brought up the film countless times. It's been one of my favorite films since I've seen it, and she just
Mhm.
never watched it, and along with a couple other of his movies that we had to watch, but very happy we got her I got her to sat down and watch it. And just even so you said you haven't seen it, right?
No, I haven't. I
Okay,
haven't.
so the
But
setting.
I know what it's about and everything.
Yeah, yeah. The setting is Nazi Germany. There's a couple different parties at play. The main characters are, there's a Nazi, I guess, general. There's an American group of, Jewish people that are called the Bastards, a group that was dropped into France, and they're going around and, causing havoc for the Nazis. And
Okay.
then there's another group, which is a lady that owns a film premiere where they're going to show like a big, I guess, Nazi war movie, and so they all kind of coincide. They tell these stories separately, and they all have threads that lead to each other, and then they all kind of meet at the end, and it's just really well done. Um,
Interesting.
and the first scene is always so memorable, and it's like often kind of shown. I don't know if you may have seen it, but do you know who Christoph Waltz, that actor?
Christoph Waltz.
Have you seen? Because he's also in another Tarantino film, Django Unchained.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
he's the
yeah. I
dentist
see.
guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
nice.
he did both films. Great in that movie too. We can talk about that too. But
Right, that's right. Yeah, he's German, right? So yeah, I
yeah,
remember you had a German background in Django. So oh yeah, so that's perfect round.
yeah. So he plays a Nazi called the Jew Hunter, as they call him.
Oh my goodness.
And it opens up on a scene of just a farmer, right? And it's his
Mhm.
his dairy farm, and he's talking to him in English, asking him about like he's like what he does, and he's very very methodical as Christoph Waltz kind of always is. I feel like that's more of a him personally thing than all his characters that he kind of just
Mhm.
brings over. So he does very well in presenting the situation and just keeping a level of like calm and while like tensions are rising, and
Mhm.
he's essentially this guy is hiding Jews under his floorboards, and he goes about like describing them, and he brings the a reference of like if you see a rat come into your house, it's done nothing wrong to you, but you have a urge to kill it or to
Oh my
to
goodness.
just get it out of there. But it looks the same as a squirrel, and you wouldn't treat a squirrel that way. And you don't know why you feel this way about this thing, but you just know that's how it is. So he's comparing, making
Oh,
that comparison.
wild.
Yeah, yeah, it's an amazing scene, and the entire time the farmer's kind of just sweating and just losing his composure, and they're talking in English, and when he gets him to admit that he's harboring them, he says, "Well, I guess they can't speak English, otherwise I'd hear a ruckus. So I'm going to switch to back to French now, and you're going to follow my lead, right?" And so he does that, and he's like, "All right, goodbye. It was nice meeting you." And then he calls the soldiers back in, and they just like they shoot up. Yeah, um,
Wow.
it is a phenomenal scene, and this one lady gets away, and it looks like he's about to shoot her, and then he just lets her go, right?
Wow.
But it's one of my favorite openings to a movie. It sets the tone perfectly, and I think I'm not sure if I haven't seen enough movies about the time. I actually have to watch, a lot of the old. I haven't seen Sound of Music or anything like that, and I know that's also around that time. But I don't know if it's just a trope when Nazis are portrayed, because in video games I've encountered this too, where there's always this sense of like it's always a cat and mouse, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're just cunning, and they're like evil and meticulous, and they always it seems like there's always some character or someone who knows that you're lying or is teetering on that, and you're trying to play the game where it's like maybe you don't, and they play along, but you know that they know, kind of, right? They drop hints like that. Christoph Waltz does that phenomenally throughout this whole film. There's a bunch that
Amen.
goes on, and every interaction he has with the other characters is him just dropping subtle hints, right? And
Wow.
the movie's like years old. I guess maybe we can come back to it after you've seen it. We can do a review of it or something.
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking I may have to look up if it's on one of the streaming services I have, because I have like four different streaming services.
It
So I
must be
may actually.
somewhere.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna look it up.
But
I'm gonna look it
I
up.
highly recommend it. Yeah, no, that movie is fantastic. So that's the
Sure.
opening scene. I kind of gave that. I'll leave the rest, to you and to anyone else who wants to watch. But
Gotcha, gotcha,
all I'll say
gotcha.
is Christoph Waltz, one of my favorite actors. He does phenomenal in it, and even when it goes in like chapters, right? It talks about each group, so it gets to the bastards, and Brad Pitt is leading them, and he does such a good job of like just the accent he does, and leading the troops, and he's talking to them about how the Nazis aren't people, and how and he's like, when you join my regiment, there is a debt. I need 100 Nazi scalps, and I will collect my scalps. So
Whoa.
it's so great. He does very good in
Oh,
that. It's very very funny the way he talks in that movie, and his background and everything. The dialogue is so well written, and that's with any Tarantino film. He's very meticulous with his character motivations, and I think that's maybe what I
yeah,
appreciate the
yeah.
most about it, right? How he can write all these well written characters and have them mingle and interact and bounce off each other, and when they're great actors it just flows even more seamlessly.
Yeah, yeah.
Really
That's so
impressive.
interesting. Yeah, I was gonna say that. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Brad Pitt is also in
Yeah,
that film,
he
and
uses a lot of the
yeah,
same ones.
I noticed, and but yeah, he plays a very interesting character in that entire film, and I don't know, it's a very fascinating character, very intriguing, and yeah, I mean, I would wait, I would want to wait until you have seen that
Maybe we
fully.
can do some homework. We can catch us next week. You
Yeah,
watch Inglorious, and I'll watch Once Upon a Time in
yeah, yeah,
Hollywood. You said?
yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you, you're gonna love it. It's very intriguing, man. Very intriguing film. Very intriguing.
So
Wow.
you've seen Django Unchained though.
Yeah, I mean it's been a while, but yeah, I have seen it. I have seen
So
it.
even that film, I guess we can compare it to is so well, like say all the same. Like Tarantino does a really good job, and it's just
I
entertaining because
agree.
like the hyper violence, like I love seeing that. It's just
Oh, yeah, of course, of course.
But Christoph Waltz is in that movie too, and same thing. He's just very meticulous and thought out with everything he does, and I, j-
Yes.
I love seeing it whenever he's on screen and sheet it up.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah, he's a very good actor.
yeah.
Very good actor.
So Julie loved it. Very happy about that. We can continue. No major changes need to be made in the relationship now. She passed the test. Um, yeah, but
Right.
so she really enjoyed it, and then we also what else did we do? I guess so. Yeah, I bought, like I said, Elden Ring, right? And we talked a little bit about it last time. We got into it a little bit, where it's a Souls game. It's from Software. That company makes Dark Souls and even Demon Souls from before, which recently got a remake on the PlayStation 5. Um, with and those type of games, and they're typically difficult and stuff. But this is the most recent installment of that franchise. They were able to get some work from George R. R. Martin, who had written Game of Thrones and other things, to help them with the setting and world building.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. So it's really a super interesting game. Very, very
Is
vague
it
too.
third person? Is it third person or first person?
It's third person.
Okay.
And I think I asked you before, but you hadn't played Skyrim or Fallout or anything like that, right?
Fallout. I actually own a Fallout game for my PS4, and it's funny because I remember. I don't. I think I may have had like a little extra money, and this is like maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago. I'm not sure, maybe four. I picked up a few PS4 games, and that was one of the games I wanted to get because I think I had somebody, a relative, playing it. But I played just like maybe 20 minutes of this game, and I realized that okay, this is one of those games where I'm only gonna have to play this. Like I can really pick up a little bit, like every single thing I can pick up, I can
Yep.
analyze. Like, I said, okay, this is not gonna be like a Red Dead Redemption type of, like I can just finish in like a 2, 3 weeks or something. Like this is something that's gonna, if I really want to be thorough, it's gonna take some time. So I have not returned back to the game. So maybe after I finish Red Dead Redemption 2,
Yeah. It can be a little daunting, but Red Dead's actually a good example too, or I was about to say Game of Thrones, Grand Theft Auto. Uh,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
all kind of games with like stories and free roam, and that's kind of the main thing I'm picking at. Not really being able to pick
Okay.
up every item and everything. Um,
Okay.
this game, in fact, is just so the fact that it's a giant map and you can go around and then you can see something. Oh, look at those mountains! I want to go over there, and you can do it. You can go over there, and
Wow.
there's things for you to interact with and do. So
Oh.
the classic difficulty is there. You will die a lot. If you saw any of the stream or anything, you saw I died a lot.
Oh my goodness.
And there's a lot of customization. I ended up going. There's a couple different preset roles. There's like, well, at least in the before games, they had cleric, they had bandit, they had sorcerer, warrior, thief, right? Things like that. And they have different names in this one, but same kind of
Okay.
basic concept. And so what I wanted to do, I spent a lot of time in the character creator. I wanted to make a faith build because I hadn't tried that yet. So it has they use it. Say it's faith, and what it does is it's like a medic or like a healer, right? So you have healing abilities, and you can cast miracles, which some of them may be offensive spells, things like that.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, so in the first Dark Souls, I went sword and shield, which is basic. You have sword and shield, and you're just kind of blocking and attacking when you can. And in the second one, I went with the more nimble. I would roll a lot to avoid attacks, and I had two swords in my hands, right? And then in the third Dark Souls, I wanted to go magic build, but I hadn't played that yet. I still plan to do that at some point. And so I was just thinking, what other role can I try this time, right? So, oh, perfect, faith. And I typically don't pick a healer role in these games that provide you with that, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
really interesting actually. When I was making it, I was having a lot of fun because I was just making him look like an old, decrepit dude, and making his chin all protruding, his nose huge, and like him just look
Oh,
ugly, and like I what I said with my buddies when I was making it was he looks like a guy who goes to yard sales and buys old yearbooks. Just shows up, like doesn't even know the people, just buys random yearbooks. You don't know what he's gonna do with them.
I don't think that yearbook thing.
So he just looks like a creep, kinda, and he's just old. And so he's like on pilgrimage, and the whole point of it was like I was just gonna be quoting scripture while I was playing the game with like demons and stuff, and it ended up being really fun. Julie was having a blast too. She was with me as
Oh, cool.
we were recording it, and we were just going off like calling like the enemies sinners as we were like smiting them and stuff, and so that was a really really fun time. There was even what's difficult is like with this whole trying to read the Bible all the time, trying to improve my life. I'm trying to like cut out curse words a little bit just for my daughter's sake and in general
Yeah,
around
yeah,
the
of course.
house. But it is very difficult when you just keep getting the "you died" screen like over and
Mm,
over, and you're spending time,
yeah. Yeah.
on you've had some boss fights before, like just
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's funny because there are certain words like, for example, like the N word. I think I've shared with you that very early on in my Christian walk, I retired it. But there were other words that like little things like what you're talking about. I'm playing Resident Evil or I'm playing something and I'm dying, and it's like the first few times I'm thinking, okay, well, let me figure out what I need to do. But especially when it's like maybe it's getting late or maybe you've been here for a while and it's like, okay, I'm determined to get past this, but
yeah,
it's not working. So yeah, your level of agitation starts to kind of
it does
rise.
that it does.
I'm actually getting, I'm wondering like, can I throw my controller into the TV and roll the TV? Because I feel like I want to just,
Yeah.
and yeah, but it's so interesting because I was briefly thinking about this before, but I was watching a old Superman Channel 5 cartoon years ago,
Yeah.
and Lobo was one of the characters that Superman was fighting. You familiar with Lobo?
I know Lobo, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Like
but
intergalactic bounty hunter, right?
yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But he uses all these different curse words, but in his language. So
Language.
yeah, yeah. So one of his words was like frag, you know, like frag or freaking frag.
Yeah.
So I actually found myself saying that, sometimes either in my head or out loud. I was like frag, and sometimes I'm thinking to myself, you know, I know what internally what really mean. So sometimes I even wonder like, is that okay to say? But it's interesting. It's interesting because
Well, no, I mean, there's a bunch of jokes that, like, they're gonna release
uh,
the Xbox Live party chat dialogues from like when we were middle schoolers, just bad mouthing, and we're all screwed, right? We're all
oh
canceled.
yeah, good God, yeah, good God. Yeah,
But
it's interesting. It's interesting because there's a lot of videos on like YouTube where people record some of the things that other people say to them,
really,
and yeah, 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 and sometimes very inappropriate things, and people just, and guys especially, it's like we'll just say whatever, because and yeah, so it's very, very fascinating, what comes out of us during those moments.
yeah. What was funny was because during those boss fights where I just kept dying, couldn't get the hold of it. I'm like, maybe you know what? Maybe I don't have enough faith. Maybe it's because I'm using this material weapons instead of just the raw faith power in my hand that I'm losing so much. Let me try this time. I'll put away my weapon. I'll just have the faith of God in my left hand and a chip on my
Oh my
shoulder in my right, and we'll go at it.
goodness! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
For sure blaspheming, no question. Like, not proud of it.
Oh my goodness!
um,
Uh,
I
so
even
so is this one of those games where like over time there's usually like some type of enhancements or
yeah. So
like it could be like the next 5-10 years and they'll be adding stuff. Is that one of those games?
no. So it's not an MMO. It's not something a long service game where they keep adding things. It's a community and everything. What happens is it's more of a game where they're gonna have the base game. They might have some DLC later, but that's usually huge content too. and then they stop it, and they'll keep supporting it as far as online for patches and fixes. But really, then the modding community, all the people that play the game, there's a huge modding community for the Dark Souls games that come in and add their own things, and a lot of times large story patches as well. So it's not one of those type of games, a live service game, but it does have improvement where you can kill an enemy and it'll drop a smithing stone, which you can use to improve your weapon, right? And I might have talked about this last time, but that's the thing. They're difficult, but and in the sense that you can't just run your way through them. A lot of times, sometimes you can run past enemies and that's fine, but you have to know the balance. Like if you disrespect or you think nothing of an enemy, they'll just chop you up real quick. Even the lowest of enemies if you're not careful with it. So you always have to kind of have that in your mind. And this one it's more, I guess, new player friendly because typically when you get to a boss, right? You will die, and then you will respawn back to the closest save point that you have discovered, and then you have to do a boss run, which is where you go down the path to the boss's door, and it is littered with the enemies you had killed before, right? Because when you die and you respawn at this place, or if you go back to this save point, you can do that willingly without dying and sit down at a bonfire is what they're called. What they will do is recharge your healing items, right? Get your health back up and your stamina back up, but it also revives all the enemies you had killed.
So you really have to think about that.
Yeah. So the bosses will not respawn after you've killed them, but if you haven't killed them, they go back to full health and everything. It resets. So what you can do is typically, so that's why the boss run is kind of hard, because you're trying to make your way to the boss to fight the boss, and you're taking all these hits, and you're like, oh, I had to use some health items to even get here, and then you're not fighting at peak efficiency that you could have been, right? So that's kind of where some of the difficulty comes from, and in this game, they've so I'm not very far, but they've removed a lot of that. Essentially, you can run past almost all, the run itself is short to the boss, and you can kind of run past enemies if there are any to get there. There's even little statues. What I found, there's this big dragon boss that I was fighting, which, by the way, visual's great. The game looks gorgeous. It looks amazing.
Yeah, I've been looking at screenshots and stuff online. Man,
yeah.
It looks really.
It's large land. You can ride your horse around and all sorts of things, and it looks beautiful, and it's very interactive. And so a giant dragon came out of nowhere, and so I'm fighting this dragon boss, and what'll happen is when I die, I can go closer. There's a spot that's close by where you can start there, or you can go back to the save point, right? And I choose to start there. If I was at the save point, I could still run to the boss, but if I start there, it's just closer, saves everyone time, makes it easier, right? So this one is as far the easiest to newcomers, which is good. It's a pretty popular game in general, but yeah, I found myself just constantly having to go back and face these bosses over a long period of time, and I just would get frustrated, but then I try to be funny about it with the whole faith thing, putting away my weapons, and eventually I was using a spear and a shield at first because that's what my character started with, but I found so you find other weapons in the game, and I found a whip, and I had never used that weapon in the other games before, and what's cool about the game is each weapon has a different moveset, right? So Claymore will have a stabbing moveset, and it'll have a swinging moveset, right? So that's really helpful if you're in a tight corridor. You need that stabbing one, because if you swing, you're just going to hit the walls, and you're not going to do anything.
Makes sense.
Right?
Makes sense.
So I picked up the whip, and it was so fluid. The whoosh, and hitting the enemy, and then you can do a circle to get enemies around you. It was very entertaining, and then I just was filled with such righteous power to send all these demons to hell. It's as if I was playing Doom or something. I held a glowing light of faith in my left hand for healing, and then the whip in my right. I was like, repent! Repent! Oh man, it was so fun with Julie. She was quipping off too. It was great. And then on horseback too, just running past people that are walking. And just having a blast. So for sure, keeping the whip for a long time. That was a really fun weapon to use, and it would like stagger some of the bosses. So what happens is the bosses will attack, right? Or anyone, any enemy you attack, even you can attack somebody. But if you're staggered, someone hits you before you get land the attack. If it's a strong enough hit, you stop your attack mid animation, right?
Oh snap!
So it's super helpful if you're quick enough, right, to
Hmm.
just stop them in their tracks. There is a stat called poise, which if you have a high poise, you can tank those hits, right? Doesn't matter how many times you hit me. If I have high poise, you're gonna get hit. The hammer's gonna come down,
Oh,
right?
oh, okay, nice, nice.
And that's typically synonymous with a heavy set build, a tankier build with heavy armor and everything, where you're not focused on rolling out of the way. More so, you just take the hits, right?
Wow,
So
wow,
there's a
wow.
bunch of ways to play it, and it's super fun. Everyone should try it. It's a great game.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, very interesting, especially with the open world aspect.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
feel like I'm appreciating that more,
Uh huh.
with games.
And I've said
Yeah,
this
yeah,
to you before. I love they're my favorite games because I always picture, okay, if I had nothing else to play in the world, I this could be it. I would be fine, right? This is one of those games. But with
uh,
me, I'm so like, oh, look at this pretty thing over here. Look at this shiny thing over here. I never
yeah,
focus on the main story, and I rarely
yeah,
beat
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah.
games. You
That's
know?
how I feel with like Grand Theft Auto, Rockstar,
Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption. It takes me forever to finish them because I want to, I'll say, oh hey, there's a mountain over there and there's smoke over there. Like I wonder who lives over there, and you can actually go and travel over there and see, who's there. And a
Yeah.
lot of people like to rob random families in their homes, and it's crazy. It's really crazy. Like the games just give you so much freedom.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
It's awesome.
it's wild. Yeah, yeah, right. Good time to be alive, man. Very good time to be alive.
It's I was thinking about that. Like the setting we live in is kind of crazy. We're like we're not in the future, but we have a lot of like futuristic type technologies while still like needing some of the old stuff. It's interesting
Yeah.
the kind of balance we have right now. Like we're developing virtual reality and things like that. And you've seen Ready Player One and other things that kind of talk about the dystopia with that and everything. But there's also like still a need for genuine human connection and like physical transportation. And everything. It's just I don't know. I was just kind of pondering that like yesterday or something. We get to
Just,
play these video games, right, which are so cool, and it's,
mhm.
but we still have to. I don't know. It's. I just thought it was interesting.
One concept I thought was fascinating that now that we're talking about this was the movie Wall-E.
Oh yeah, great film.
Yeah, and I remember just the human beings, like everyone was like in this futuristic chair that can pretty much they can like they have this like this instant Amazon type thing going on. They could literally buy something as they're like going down a hallway,
Yeah,
and they're just like ordering food or and these things can almost come to them almost instantaneously, and everyone was out of shape, everyone, and I think like eventually something happened where I don't know what Wally did. It's been a while since I've seen this, but two people, a male and a female, accidentally just rubbed each other's like hand accidentally, and they realized like, oh, this is actually nice to touch someone,
yeah,
and yeah, it was just it was very interesting just to see that because of course somebody thought of that idea like, oh, in the future everyone's going to be just reliant on technology so much where there's no need to get up anymore. There's no need to get up. Like they had these chairs that were just levitating, bringing them everywhere, and everyone was out of shape. Everyone was on the internet. Everyone had everything they needed right in front of them, and so yeah, it's fascinating that you bring that up because even though I don't remember too much about Wally, and now I'm talking about it, I'll probably look it up on Disney Plus sometime this weekend, maybe. But yeah, but I thought it was very fascinating, and yeah, I would agree. It's and I like that's interesting that you say with what you said about the time period that we're in because I think I was hearing that some people who are trying to go cross country in their Tesla like it's kind of tricky to be away from a location where maybe in the city like there's all these different locations where you can charge your car, but how does that work when you're on the road? I don't know, in like the Midwest or something. How does that work?
yeah.
So yeah, it's just interesting. You bring up a good point about the transition period where the time that we're in. It's
And it's like some
I
things
agree.
work and some things don't, and we have to try different things. I think
Yeah.
nuclear energy was a really big like thing for us. It was very like leap into the future. You know, we're out of just water and steam. We're making all this like high powered stuff, but then the fallout of Chernobyl and all these explosions and everything have forever scarred us. You know, so it's like when
Yes.
we try to do something too profound or too futuristic too quick, I guess it's not done well and it can have bad consequences. You know,
Correct. Correct.
and we're having
Correct.
this energy crisis and everything, and who knows what's gonna next solution's gonna come from.
Yeah. 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 It's funny because I think everyone always toys with the idea of like like the Matrix and all these other
Oh yeah.
iRobot steps where it's like we're gonna build this
Oh,
AI system that's gonna be so so advanced that it's going to want to replace us and get rid of us. Like calculate the fact that human beings are imperfect. You guys got to go, or you're gonna be food or something.
well, it's really that's one of the ones that I'm just that just irks me, and irks like there's a whole concept called the Uncanny Valley. Are you familiar with it?
Hmm.
So the Uncanny
Uncanny
Valley,
value.
yes, the Uncanny Valley, right,
Uncanny
is
Valley. Okay.
is when someone sees a robot and is disturbed the more they look like a human. So not just a robot, but anything that looks like a human or is really close, but you know it's not. So that
Okay.
feeling of discomfort and how disturbed you get based on that is called the uncanny valley, and everyone is kind of different with how far their gauge goes. But typically, it's just disturbing. You seeing all these videos of these advanced robots. It's not just in games. It's not just in movies anymore. Like you're seeing real videos of robots that like look like people. They're made to look like people. They're made. They're
Oh yeah.
all this artificial intelligence is trying to uh, I guess pinpoint human actions and thoughts,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
replicate the process. And there's tons of
Yeah. Yeah.
movies and videos and video games about this, which we love and everything.
Absolutely.
I like the concept a lot, but it's just scary, and we're getting closer
Yeah.
to it.
Well, you make up a good point because I instantly thought of like Terminator, for example.
Well, yeah, that's a
Like
good one.
yeah, yeah. Like I'm thinking like this thing, is committed to like I don't know pursuing someone or something, and it's like, you hit it with all these different things, but it's been designed to take that damage and to keep moving, and it's not going to get tired like us. It won't get tired. It doesn't
Yep.
need to eat. It doesn't need to sleep. It'll keep coming. And then of course there's these different versions of these things where liquid metal and all these other ideas are like they're reinforced even. So yeah, just fascinating, fascinating. What I think one of the scariest ones to me was not only Matrix but iRobot. It was almost
Yeah.
like yeah, yeah, and this AI system was basically like manipulating all these other things and basically calculated like it feels that it can do a better job than human beings. It's already calculated our imperfections, and yeah, we're not in the position to be in charge anymore. And so I just thought, yikes. Um, I mean, I personally I don't really freak out too much about this. I mean, I don't. I think it would be unwise. I don't know. I think it'd be, we should be mindful of what we create, and things like that. But I am confident that one of the most complex machines that has ever been built is the human being. I think
Uh,
God is a genius when it comes to, you know, just our creative minds and things like that. And for us to adapt and learn what works, what doesn't work, and stuff like that. Like even you and I, as we work on, our podcast, what we're doing here with our stage clear, like we have the mind to even before we started, like you immediately say, hey man, what do you think we can tinker with to make this better? Like we already know to do that. It comes natural to us. It comes natural. So that's I'm not freaking out too much about the possibility of robots taking over per se. But I do feel like we shouldn't underestimate what it is that we're capable of as well. That makes sense.
yeah, no, and I think one of the more relevant literary sources that all these kind of ideas kind of pull from, whether they intend to or not, is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, right? And I love
Correct.
that book so much, and it's kind of just about our hubris and trying to play God and creating life, right? And the terrible things that happen when you don't nurture it. And
Yes. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of similarities between us creating these robots and back to like Dr. Frankenstein creating the monster and everything.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy, and it's almost inevitable that it would just turn us on us at some point. And I mean, there are mediums and movies that show like good robots and everything, and where it turns out fine, but so much of it is focused on like the dark possibility, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I guess it's just
Yeah.
thought provoking and interesting to see.
It is. It is. It is. I think the most complex to me was the Matrix, obviously, because
Yeah.
the idea of not only um, manipulating us and being able to kill us, but using us as food, and we were just being harvested, and we were just basically being entertained by a world that didn't really exist. That to me was like that just went over my head.
Well,
I said, "Yikes!"
yeah, and those that first movie is so great, and the rest of them too. And actually wrote a paper on, I think it was in the first one of the quotes they
Oh,
had.
really?
Yeah, yeah, in one of my English classes, and it was talking about how if this, they're trying to discover, I guess, if it is the Matrix, and he might be talking to one of the agents, but he's saying that we tried making a paradise for humans,
Yeah,
right? We tried putting you
yeah.
guys in and you guys saw through it, and you
We
guys didn't.
rejected it. We
Yeah.
rejected it. Yeah.
So he was saying like
And
humans define their reality through pain, through suffering, and so
that's really cool.
it's like such a good quote, just in a sci-fi movie, like
Yes, I
just this
remember that.
profound idea, just right there, right? That's why it's such a like classic, and
Yes. Yes.
I just loved that concept and that idea that like how do you define your reality? What makes it real to you? Because all your senses can be tricked. We're all just could just be synapses going off in your brain. It's very hard to find something reliable to determine what reality is. So I
Mm.
thought that whole concept was very very intriguing.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and and that's one thing I really enjoy about just entertaining the idea of science fiction and just that world where it's just exploring like the mythologies and other new concepts like this. And this is actually something I bump heads with sometimes when it comes to other people of the Christian faith. And I don't know if you've met any of them before, but you have some people that they reject, video games, they reject TV shows, they reject movies, they reject everything,
Yeah.
because they feel like the screen is basically the devil. I know people that they refuse to use social media because they feel like that's of the devil. And some people who are only using Facebook Messenger but not using like their account. It's very strange, and they don't want to put their picture there because they feel like that's succumbing to Satan. And so I meet these people, and it's
Do these
it's
people think
intriguing.
taking a photograph will steal their soul? Like
I mean,
those type?
as far as I know, I don't think it's. But it's fascinating because it's one thing when a person says, "Hey, these are my personal convictions." That's one thing. But often I find people almost kind of like saying, "Hey, these are my convictions, and you also should be doing what I'm doing." You know,
Yeah.
yeah, that's. And if you haven't bumped into these people, I'm sure you will. You and Julie will bump into these people, and
Just in the
sometimes
Christian
you kind of.
community or just in general?
Well, I mean, they would identify as Christians as well.
Hmm.
So it's yeah, and that's the thing for me is I do believe that we are all in different places in our lives when it comes to our faith, and maturity and stuff like that. But it's fascinating because that's always been one of the biggest conflicts. Like one of the things I remember, and I brought up to you is, and I feel like we could probably make a whole show about this, and I don't know how much you want to explore in this, but
No, go. I was gonna say this kind of naturally transitioned into philosophy. I'm
okay,
all for it. Go
okay,
ahead.
okay. But I remember when The Last of Us back in 2020 was was supposed to come out, and I remember I was just so like fixated on, oh snap, like finally we have a follow-up game. The first one was excellent. There's going to be like a TV show on HBO Max, and I don't know how long that's going to go. There's probably comic books. Like there's a lot community of people that love this world. And so um, and then I found out that the main character, Ellie, was going to be homosexual,
Uh huh.
and yeah, and I remember, even I think around I don't know if it was like the year before 2019, Like there was even like a special shirt that Naughty Dog was coming out with, with the rainbow and stuff like that, and really trying to sell this idea, like make sure you acknowledge your homosexual the community as well, and you have this fictional character that so many people love. Well, turns out we're gonna have her to be homosexual, as well. Like it's that was something that kind of threw me off because I'm thinking like I don't know, like I was thinking of all these other things, and the first game was still and once you kind of get a little bit more familiar with both games and the stories, you'll see what I'm talking about. The first one is
Yeah.
very different than the second one. The first one I kind of feel like there's so much more that could have been built up with that, and I suspect there's going to be like a return to the first one. I don't know if they're going to do a remake or whatever, but yeah, but it was just as a Christian man, as somebody that's devout, if I was like sitting in a Bible study, with all these other devout Christians, and I said, oh hey, by the way, guys, there's a video game I'm playing and the character is homosexual. Like there's a lot of half the room is probably gonna say, then why are you playing it? Why are you
Really?
playing?
Okay.
Probably,
So to
probably, yeah.
disassociate yourself from all of that, they're saying.
Well, yeah, yeah, and so that's what I'm, and so I think that's one of the conflicts that those of us in Christ we have to kind of uh, really kind of work through. Like I know for a fact if if I turn this game on, I'm not going to turn into a homosexual. That's not
Yeah.
going to influence me. But yeah, but it's something that we I think that for the Christian walk, it makes things um, almost I don't know if I want to say complex, but it almost gives us just um, a different set of things that really challenge us than somebody who really doesn't necessarily have any moral guidelines or nothing specific. So I mean, even when I think about Red Dead Redemption, I mean, you're playing this cowboy, and sure, you can make the occasional, um, you know, you can make decisions that are beneficial to you and the community. You can say hi to people and give people money. There's always people asking for money, and later on, you might see them in another chapter, and they're like, "Hey, Mister, remember that time when you gave me that money? Yeah, well, I, got a fortune, and here you go. Here's a portion of your. And so there's benefits, but also like in most of the game, like you're an outlaw, and you are
Yeah.
killing innocent people, and you are. And so it makes me wonder. Okay, well, like where is the boundary? Is it like, hey, this is obviously fiction. This is not real. It's okay to entertain this, like even when it comes to Hollywood movies and stuff like that. And I hear somebody blaspheme God's name. It's like, okay, how much am I supposed to take with this? Because I know some people, one time and they're out. They're out. They
Yeah.
will walk out of the theater, and that's enough. And so, it is something that I do think about. There are times when a show is it's too much. Other stuff I can just bypass because I want to see Jessica Jones. I want to see Luke Cage. I want to see the story. So it's like I can get past certain scenes.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I do think that as Christians we do have something additional to kind of manage in our lives versus somebody that may be outside of Christ when it comes
Well,
to these media.
yeah, that's something I was always. I've talked to you about it because you're the only person I've met that's actually taken some steps to remove certain things from your life, or actually not even. You won't watch something, right? I think it was back when Deadpool 1 came out. You made a post on your Facebook that, like, I love the character, I love everything about it, but I'm going to be skipping the movie this time. And that's the first time I saw it. I was like, oh, James,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I, I
Really,
wasn't really super serious about my faith then or anything. I was like, I love God too, but I mean,
yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
see the movie,
yeah. But it's Deadpool, right?
And not even so much that I cared so much for the character, but it seemed interesting, and I love superheroes, and I was thinking like, man, he's really missing out. What is he doing? And I'm not
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
if you would kind of change your stance on that or not. And I'm still, and that's one of the things that always kind of was like, okay, James is kind of where I should be, but I'm scared. I don't want to go to that because I don't want to have to make those sacrifices, right? I don't want to have to
yeah,
worry
yeah,
about
yeah.
that. I want to just enjoy my movies and stuff. And I'm still, we are Christians and we're taking steps to get there, but I'm not. I don't know if I'll ever get to the point where I'm trying to exclude. If obviously certain things that are just completely vulgar that there's not much value in there intrinsically. Yeah, there's no need to watch that. But as far as
Mm,
like
mm.
a movie or a story, and especially something that's relevant to something I like already, it's gonna take a lot for me to kind of not watch it after.
No, no, I no, I get you. I get you. It's it's fascinating because uh, I definitely think that when it comes to our human limitations and the idea of a person trying to fix themselves and try to make themselves like a really good Christian. I think that, a lot of us, especially in like the modern day church, has this twisted view like we have the authority to make that happen. And we really don't. It's really something that God does to us. He's the one that starts to make us sensitive to certain things. He's the one that motivates a man to say, well, you know what? I've been with this woman for X amount of years, but actually should take the next step and marry her. Like she deserves to be loved and valued. And how does it look if her friends and family are looking at her and say, man, you've been with this guy for 20 years and he hasn't married you? What's wrong with you? And it's
Oh
like
wow.
it's something. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because for ladies, it's I don't know. I feel like society doesn't get on us about marriage as much, but lady, and then specific cultures as well, they're a little bit more sensitive to that. I don't know. You
Yeah,
probably
at APU, the Christian college I went to for a bit, there was a term "ring by spring," which is, I guess, among the girls once their senior year, if they're not, getting engaged by the spring before, like, it's like a stigma that they won't get married, which I was like,
wow,
wow, that's
that's
crazy.
terrible.
But it
Oh,
like it made sense. A lot of the people that I went to, like, I was engaged, but I had been with my wife since like high school, 8 years, right?
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of people they meet in that college, and then they're pretty quick about it. They're both Christians, and
They
they
get after.
yeah, yeah, they like within a year, Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so I thought that was really interesting.
yeah, yeah. That's one of the stereotypes of especially like newer believers, younger believers is within I don't know, within a few weeks or a few months, like I think the joke online is like as soon as a woman agrees to go out with you, like by the second date, the guy's already ready to propose, like that's the joke for the Christian, right? Like he's already ready to propose.
Yeah,
And which I get it, and it's fascinating because for years I remember not caring that much about marriage as much like I do now. And I'm not in a place where I'm obsessed with it, but I feel like I understand the unity that God created behind it. Like I understand the concept now of why it is what it is, of a man and woman coming together with God involved, as the foundation. And like I get it now. And I think it's pure genius. It's pure genius. And then the way that men and women are created, it's fascinating how we perfectly like complement one another. We complement one another. So
yeah.
it's yeah, like I love how, and heaven forbid, let's say somebody, knock down your door, and it's midnight, everyone's asleep. Like the natural response in your household is not going to be Julie get up and she's going to grab a bat and say, "Hey Tim, I got this." Yeah, yeah,
I
you know what
mean,
I'm saying?
she's
Like,
pretty handy with a shotgun. She can do some damage. I will be the one with the physical instrument. She'll probably be the one with the gun.
but I'm just imagining, Julie.
You should see her at the
Yeah,
range. She's a champ.
yeah, yeah, no, that's true. You told me about her how she handles herself at the range.
Yeah.
All right, but no, but you know what I mean. Like, there's just this natural dynamic that we know that you're the guy. That's going to be your role,
Yeah.
and there doesn't necessarily have to be um, a conversation about that. You both know that's your role. You both know.
Mhm.
You both know that's what needs to happen. And I just love how God has designed this connection between men and women where in which we, like I said, we women naturally, like, cater to children a different way than we men do. We still can cater, but it's just different. They have an instinct that's just very different. And for us guys, we are protectors. We are willing to sacrifice and protect our families and do what it is we need to do to make sure that our households have what we need. And I'm talking about us, genuine guys, the guys
Yeah.
that are actually, yeah, yeah. But yeah, but I just love the idea behind the marriage covenant. But yeah, it's just very fascinating how, whether it's looking at video games and media and how we conduct ourselves and those convictions, it's something that God uh, guides. And we haven't really gotten too into Reformed theology, Calvinism, but yeah, that's something um, that the Reformed community really emphasizes is that it's God that initiates a person's faith. It's not us. The
Yeah.
modern church, modern ideas that we'll get sick and tired of having a sad life or whatever. Things are not working out. We say, okay, now I need Jesus. Now I'm going to come to Jesus on my own because now I see my life is not, but somebody in the Reformed community would argue that the Bible says, well, you're never going to reach that point that you need Christ unless God puts it in you to reflect and say, oh, wait a minute, my life is in danger. Like I'm going to kill myself if I keep going down this
Yeah.
road, and yeah, and it's Ephesians 2:8-9. It says, by grace you have been saved through faith, and not of yourselves. It's a gift from God, not of works, lest any man should boast. And so the idea is that it's a free gift. Eternal life is a free gift that is initiated by God. So, it's so funny because I actually was chatting with your mom actually recently about this concept, and I was reminding her as we were communicating that, the difference between biblical Christianity is that all the other faiths teach that you kind of have to do good works and then hopefully you'll get into heaven.
Yeah.
And biblical Christianity teaches that essentially that God saves you, and then from there you do the good works after you've already been saved. So God puts that in you to move forward and reflect His nature. But all the other faiths and ideologies kind of say, well, let me try my best to work into that so I can be saved. And the genuine Christian, well, we do the good works because we're saved.
Yeah.
James chapter 2 kind of really unpacks that actually.
So you talked earlier about the group of Christians that would be very strict about what they're watching, what they're bringing into their home, right? And how they would try to get others to think like them. I feel.
Yeah.
Do you think that's more of a religious kind of thought and need to kind of spread the message and evangelize, or do you think that's more of a human thing where we compare ourselves to others and we can put ourselves ranking and like, oh, they're not I see myself as above them. They should be doing it this way. They need to do right, because there's a lot of people that aren't religious that still, will point out flaws or anything and try to put up their system over others in senses, right? So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to, like, for example, I associate with people that are atheists, for example, and, they don't support the Bible, or maybe certain pieces or little elements they do agree with, but for the most part, they don't really care for it. So, and I'm not recommending every Christian do this, take this exact approach, but anytime somebody outside of Christ, I'm going to say, challenges my thoughts or imposes their ideas of morality and ethics and justice on me, I always ask them, well, what is your standard, or by what standard are you using to and we'll go into that, because for me, I have, of course, God's word. I have His authoritative word. God's thoughts and His commandments trumps human opinion.
Yeah.
So this is how I know that lying is wrong or stealing is wrong or whatever. It's God's already established that on Mount Sinai. He's already established that. So for the atheist, it's like, okay, what is your source? What is your source? How do you know that evil is wrong? How do you know lying, stealing, cheat? Now some people may say, oh, well, society decides, but then, we were talking about Inglorious, Bastards in the 1940s, what was taking place during that time period, that idea of Nazi Germany. Well, it was legal to kill Jews. They were not considered humans legally. Yeah. So it's like, well, you can't use human opinion. There has to be an authority over everyone, and that would be God. That transcends human opinion. But when it comes to like morality and justice and stuff like that, you have people who identify as Christians that there's like the spectrum, and you have some people that are on one extreme, and you have on the other extreme, you have some people that are more, okay, well, we can do whatever we want because Jesus died on the cross, so everything's okay. We can do whatever we, and it's okay if I want to watch pornography. It's okay if I want to lie and steal. It's okay if I want to sleep around. Jesus already died on the cross, so I don't have to worry about, so that's on the other one end, and that's actually something called antinomianism. And that means like against God's law. It's people who have a complete disregard for what God says when it comes to His commandments, when His guidelines. Like they don't really care. They don't think, and they still would argue they're Christian, but they just think everything is can go. Everything's a green light because Jesus died on the cross, and who are you to say I'm not a Christian? And then you have on the opposite end, um, legalism, and that's sort of what we're talking about. Is the people that feel like, hey, social media is bad, or watching Hollywood movies is bad, or video games is bad, or I don't know, walking your dog on the left side of the street is bad, because they just come up with it. They just come on, and that's also just as bad as antinomianism. So the idea is to really have like a centered understanding of what the Bible actually teaches and not drift into, and that's what I love about the Bible is if you're familiar with it enough, you can kind of see who's the antinomianist and who's the legalist, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah, yeah. So yeah, but the idea is to always get back to God's word, of course.
Sure. So as far as evangelism itself and versus secular people, right?
Okay.
Do you think it's like I said before, more it comes more from the religious, and it's easier for someone with a religious background to kind of evangelize or just be vocal about their opinions of you should be doing this, or is that just a human thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because first off, it's a little it can be very difficult sometimes to try to differentiate between who is actually demonstrating that they're actually following God and who's not. But yeah, when it comes to evangelism, everyone who's in Christ is supposed to do that. But I think that you have some people, Tim, that actually are Christians and maybe in an immature state, they kind of impose these thoughts or they have the wrong approach. And
Yeah.
then you have other people that may not be Christians at all, but they're under the illusion they are because they said a prayer when they were 5 years old and they think, okay, from there on, I was signed up for Christianity. And, but their lives have never demonstrated that they actually have any convictions or they love God. But I think the idea is to handle either person is to really share what the Bible actually teaches when it comes to, like for example, I know First Corinthians tells us that Paul writes that he and one of his minister partners, they invested in people, they invested in communicating the gospel, but it was God who increases in knowledge. It's God who increases in somebody's change, which is the new birth, John 3:3. So for you and I to go in and talk to somebody and say, hey, let's talk about Christ with this person and the truth and the gospel. For us to go in thinking we're going to change them, that would be the wrong idea. The idea is God is the one that does that.
Yeah.
God is the one that has the authority, not only God alone. Not no human being has the authority to change anybody. And so our thing is just to share and leave that alone and just kind of leave it up to God from there. But
Which I
yeah,
mean,
but no,
for good. I mean, because if you were responsible for like people's conversion or not, that's kind of a huge weight responsibility. Like,
seriously,
you know.
seriously,
So
yeah,
we kind of got to this. We were talking about we went on a bit of a tangent, but we were talking about AI and kind of the future, the uncertainty of the
yeah,
future.
yeah.
I remember I came to that thought because I'm going through a mobile marketing class where they're talking about cookies and different things on websites that track your different things that you look at that have your attention. They try to advertise to you specifically, right? And I was
Hmm.
thinking, they gave the example of different states presenting laws that protect people's private information, so it can't be sold to advertisers for use of advertising. And while it is very creepy, and I really don't like how like you can have a conversation and it seems like your phone's listening because it'll bring you an ad for what you just talked about, or
Yeah.
it gets into another step where you weren't even talking about it, but you were just thinking about something, and it gives you an ad for that. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's an algorithm that like kind of tracks what you do and your purchase habits and everything, and it kind of presents these ideas to you. And there is the feeling that it's creepy. You didn't authorize that, right? There's no reason it should be tracking that. But then there's also like it works. It's effective. I buy more things that I'm seeing because I'm seeing cooler things that I'm more interested in. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so and that kind of goes with the whole Wally thing. It's like all your needs are being met in that chair. You're connected, and it's just as far as the future that you want. It's just convenient, right? It's making things more convenient for you, but I don't know. Is it worth, I guess, them listening to the conversations and stuff? Obviously, that shouldn't be happening, but yeah, it's just I do like being introduced to new different things that I'd like to see sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. You say that because I remember early on, people used to always tell me about that, and I always dismissed them as like conspiracy theorists and all that. It's like, ah, be quiet. The
Yeah.
government's listening, and Facebook wants to know what. But I think it was just a few years ago. I had to come to the realization that this was actually happening.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I would open my yeah, I would open my Instagram or Facebook, and a ministry that maybe I was looking up or even possibly thinking about, or I was playing on my YouTube on my PlayStation, you know, back all the way in Florida, like, they'd be, I would be keeping up with them, talking about them, or checking on what they're doing. And yeah, I would log into my Facebook or Instagram and see advertisement or some type of like reference to that specific ministry. And I kept thinking to
Yeah.
myself, like, I know Facebook is not like big on religion and Christianity, especially not in the Reformed community, but it was like specifically for me, you know. And when it kept happening, I kept realizing, like, okay, I'm gonna have to come to the conclusion that obviously something's happening here, especially with my Google News. Like I don't know about you, but yeah, I go to my Google News and it's so fascinating how everything is Walking Dead, everything is Snyderverse, everything is like me specifically,
Yeah.
and I'm like this, The Last of Us, it's always specifically to my taste. Resident Evil, you name it, or it might be what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. Like I'm keeping up with that, and it's always specifically tailored for my needs, and it's just it's wild. It's
Well,
wild. So
yeah, that's interesting. I'm doing a project with some friends, and we're talking about the recent Blizzard, Activision, the Microsoft acquisition of that company, and we were just talking about it and bringing up different articles, and then I get like throughout the week before our next meeting, it was like 2 days, and I literally got a notification, a Google whatever on my phone talking about a new article from them that came out, and I was like, that is hyper relevant. That's I should save that
right.
for our conversation later. Like, so it's like it helps, but it's like that's creepy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I mean, one thing I've kind of joked about is, because I have my sister, my older sister, she's really big on. I'm gonna
Oh,
say
my
like
my baby's crying.
she's big on like the conspiracy theorist thing. Like she embraces it. Like she doesn't see it as an insult.
Really?
You know. Yeah, yeah. She's really open to and sometimes she's joked with me that James, you got to be careful with the government because they're always listening to you and all that kind of stuff. And my response is typically, well, I hope so, and maybe they'll be saved by Christ. They'll be delivered by the gospel. I hope they'll get the gospel, and the agents listening, like, oh, like,
Yeah, your FBI agent is like, this guy's spitting. He's just talking truth.
yeah, yeah. Like they're getting convicted. Like I want that. I would want that.
Did you guys hear about this Jesus guy? Oh my god.
I really take this religion thing seriously. But no, it is. I will say there may be times when I'm maybe looking up something that I don't know. I wouldn't prefer people to know that I'm working on or a project or whatever. And yeah, I don't want Google to recite to me what it is that I'm looking up. What projects I'm. I don't know. I may not want that to be out there, and so.
Yeah.
Um, so I
And
mean, yeah. So I would say it's creepy. It is. It is.
what's funny about the term conspiracy theory is that it was made up by the CIA back in like the 70s or the 60s or something. Or I forget what time, but it was like literally that phrase was created by them and kind of implemented by them to kind of, make everyone who disagrees with what's going on kind of seen as like a tinfoil hat person or someone who's crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and there are definitely conspiracy theories out there that are just far fetched and wild, and some of that
Oh
could
yeah.
be actually planted as like this is the conspiracy theory to distract from like the actual what's going on. I don't mean to get
Yeah.
too into it, but it's very, very interesting, looking into the stuff that other governments have done and secret organizations and
Mhm.
everything. And our government, especially with stuff that's been recently declassified, a lot to go
Mhm.
into there. And there's a lot that's still hidden, right? And I think one of the biggest fallacies we have is just assuming that this giant government corporation or whatever is going to have our best interests at heart. And I actually wrote a Twitter thread about this earlier this week, and I didn't mean to. I didn't mean I thought I knew it was a good topic, and I knew there's a lot I wanted to get into. I was going to write it later, but I ended up just like, let me get out this thought real quick. I was doing some homework for my econ class, and it was presenting the concept of like car insurance, and it was talking a lot about incentive-based, products and different businesses and stuff. And I forget what the term is called, but basically assuming that a person is going to act in their own self-interest, not just their self-interest, but doing what is best for them, right? Okay. So someone can act in their self-interest, but they might not choose what's best for them because they haven't thought about it enough. They don't know the strategy of what choice is best. But when you're in the business world, you want to assume that every buyer and every other competitor is going to act in their best self-interest, and that goes off what incentivizes them, right? And you can see this in a corporate pay structure, any kind of pay structure. If you're paying a manager some money and you're giving him a bonus based on how many sales he makes. I'm not sure if I talked to this about you before, but a manager, how many sales he makes, and then he talks about, or he will reach that quota of sales to get that bonus, but he could have done that by slashing prices, right? And then that doesn't equal the profitability in the end, so you're still screwed. So in that class, it was talking about making sure the incentives of the company are the same as the incentives of the employees and the managers. But what got kind of depressing a little bit to me is like realizing like what our whole structure here, not just in America, but in general, like what are our incentives? And in a capitalist kind of society, it really incentivizes, monetary gain and everything. And there's a lot of other incentives, and I'm not saying capitalism's bad or anything, but as far as just, how bad it's gotten with big pharma and with our politicians and everything and different things in that nature, it got kind of depressing. And an example I gave with the economics homework I was doing was with car insurance, right? And how there's different laws that are enacted now that require it, right? So people, this is just straight up, people that have insurance of some kind or some kind of assurance that their loss will be mitigated are just bound to act more recklessly, to drive more recklessly, to not care as much for what could be lost because it can be replaced, right? And versus people that don't have insurance, they'll have to drive more carefully because that loss will hit them harder, right?
Yeah.
So I was using that example, and I just had, it was easy to search up too, some research for it. There was a paper that was written by someone, I think, I forget the school, but I posted a Twitter thread about it, and there's a link there to the paper. But it talks about how since like the 90s and 80s, there was like a big rise in legislation for it and insurance in general. So it showed that, proving or requiring it and other auto laws that require it has a negative overall effect on traffic fatalities. Despite whatever good could come from it, right? People insured, whatever, it has an overall negative impact. And that not only affects, the poorer class people, and it was talking about there's two classes of people, right? The class that has the money, the introducing a law that requires insurance wouldn't affect these people because they were going to buy it anyway. They wanted to protect their assets and they had the funds to do so, so they were going to do it anyway. It wouldn't affect them. It affects the lower class people that maybe couldn't afford it and are now forced to buy it. So it takes money from them for that, and it takes more money from them for not having it, right, with fines and whatnot if they get caught, right? Places all these social stigmas on it. And then, they're covered what little they can get if there is an accident, but now they are tagged along with the group that has insurance, so now they will drive, less carefully. Whereas before, if they knew, like, this is the only car I got and I can't handle it, like, they will be driving super careful, right? Someone in that situation. So it's about incentives. People have the incentive to act in their best interest, and even unconscious incentives. You're not thinking I'm going to drive recklessly all the time, but just naturally, you're not as worried about it, so you're not telling yourself to drive more careful. So that's just one example. And I wanted to get into a lot bigger thought of like, the pharmaceutical companies and the healthcare industry in general, and how it's incentivized like a company instead of just healing people. It's more so talking about keeping patients as customers instead of healing. and
Mm.
it's not profitable for a hospital or a pharmaceutical company to treat you effectively and quickly because they will be losing a customer. It is instead more profitable to give you small little doses that get you a little bit better, so you keep coming back and keep having to buy and keep getting your new subscription, new prescription. So it's really predatory and it's pretty awful, you know. Um,
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. It's interesting because, well, first off, like, I feel like when it comes to, like, especially the different schools of thought when it comes to politics and our ideologies, you have some people more on the left and more on the right, but I find that since I kind of came out more as a conservative back in like 2020 openly, I've noticed that most of there are more people that go into that category. I would say as the conspiracy theorists, whatever, more on the right. Like there's a lot of people that I associate with, and it's always about the government. It's always about all these different things that what's happening. The manipulation and even what you're talking about in regards to the incentives. And I think my primary concern is that when we are supposed to be following God, you know, we shouldn't be stressing over things like that. Like there's always going to be people that are going to try to exploit others, like it
yeah,
happened in the
common theme
Greco-Roman,
throughout history.
empire, yeah, 2000 years ago, like it's always happening. It's going to always happen and it will never stop. I mean, this is sort of that sinful nature we have. And yeah, I mean, if I created I don't know, a hand sanitizing company, I don't want to say any particular words that can get us flagged or anything like that. But let's say everything that's happening, in the world,
Yeah,
within since 2020, um, yeah, this actually would benefit me and my company.
yeah,
This would benefit us if I make hand sanitizer. And yeah, I may actually decide to rack up the prices. Absolutely, absolutely, because now I'm going to be in, I could afford more things now. Now I can do more because now this is what's happening, and this is working to my benefit. This is working to my benefit. So absolutely, I don't want things to change. No, no. I mean, it would. I can get a better house and a nice yacht. Of course, I don't want this to stop. So no, I do see what it is that you're talking about. But I think ultimately, um, I think it's important to know that God does establish government. This is something addressed in like Romans 13. A lot of us like to go to, and there's other areas in the New Testament, specifically that God reminds us that He's the one that created the government. And the
yeah,
purpose is, of course, to coordinate, just a society and just to protect people and to punish, evildoers and things like that. And one of the reasons why I lean more on the right as a conservative is I do have an issue with the government, sticking its hand in, like, going beyond what it is that's required of them. There's a lot of things that they're kind of sticking their hands in that I feel like, government shouldn't be a part of what's happening with maybe marriage or maybe children in the womb and stuff like that. That has nothing, that's not their job to be a part of that. And so I have an issue with them overreaching in those other, you know, things that really has nothing to do with them. So I do understand that they have a specific role, but yeah, they're stretching their hand a little too further across that table, and they're going in everyone else's plates. That's sort of the issue I have. But in regards to that, I know that every single person, whether they're in our legislation, our executive branch, judicial branch, everyone's going to bow their knee and they're going to answer to God one day.
yeah,
Every everyone and everyone on YouTube who's behind the scenes on YouTube, everyone in Google, everyone on Twitter, the teams behind it, everyone is going to answer to God one day. It's appointed for everyone to die once, and then comes the judgment. So it's not something that I feel like for those of us who are Christian, we should be stressing so much over. I think it's good to be aware of what's happening because I don't support ignorance. I don't think
yeah,
that's like just walk down the street and stare at the sky and just everything will just work itself out. No, I think we should be aware of crooked companies that are saying, hey, yeah, we can make a profit this way, but hey, let's rack up the prices for this way. I think, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy capitalism and the free market is we can use our dollars to say, you know what, we don't like that, so we're going to take our money and pull it away. We're going to put it over here. Like that's
yeah,
what I love about the free market is we can respond to this company and say, hey, you do that, but we're not going to give you business. We're going to go over here, or we'll figure out something natural or whatever else, and leave you alone. So this is something I love about our society when it comes to, the capitalistic system. It's like the best um, form of, you know, when it comes to just economics, when it comes
Like a
to the way that
balancing
we can approach.
system.
Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect.
I
I
agree. It
love it.
puts the power in like the people's hands as far as like buying power, spending power, but those systems don't work when the government again overreaches and like bails out
Oh yeah,
different structures that are
yeah,
destined to
yeah,
fail or doesn't deregulate and destroy, break up monopolies. We have giant tech monopolies right now, and those are
yes,
only
we do.
getting stronger and more prevalent. They're influencing politics. It's a cesspool of like nonsense, and it feels really bleak, you know. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to give
Go
in
ahead.
to the temptation of like, oh, right now we're living in such a complex time and like it's so just because it's the time we're living in, right? I haven't,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sure other people thought the same way about other times that they've lived in. There's a lot of
mhm.
history to go around. There's something always happening.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Of course.
um but as far as just like it all kind of seems I get very pessimistic about it when I just learn more about it and how the structures aren't really holding up to what they should be doing, and it just makes me want to just consolidate and just block all that out and focus on me and my family,
Yeah,
every
yeah, yeah,
day, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's that's
yeah.
healthy, I think. If when either side, whatever side you're on, the past couple of political elections for president, like there was outcry and fallout on both sides, like
Mm,
after each
mm.
one. And I'm just thinking the entire time, like, if you're like, how are you so like distraught about over this decision that has almost nothing to do with you in a lot of cases, right? If your day to day is affected by the president choice himself, like, what is going on wrong in your life? What can you improve in your life where you're not as reliant on that? That's not a direct
I
effect to
agree.
you, right?
I agree.
Because
I agree.
the good thing about America is it gives us the freedom to have some space, where if you can create a life for yourself and you can have a lot of the freedoms that you enjoy, you don't have to focus and every day on the rat race and the news and keep up to date with it all the time. The 24/7 news cycle is awful.
It is. It is. And I feel like, especially like I'm gonna say, maybe it was last year, but I was talking to a relative of mine, an aunt, and she was kind of worked up about the virus and everything that's happening, and I asked her, well, what are you learning? What news sources are you listening to? She said, well, I'm listening to CNN every day, and I said, oh, I mean, I just knew that just for her revealing that, I just said, "Oh, okay." Like I know where and what to what degree she's been affected
Yeah,
just by that. Because, they had the death ticker in 2020 of all these people passing away. Like it was always, it was like so strange how that was something that was happening. With this virus, like it was a death ticker. It's like always in the. I don't know if it was at the bottom of the screen, but it was like this. And I'm thinking like never in history have we ever had something strange like that happening. Like
yeah,
could you imagine? Like, yeah, could you imagine if we kept up with people who die in cars, in car accidents, or like nobody would be getting in cars. Like this is some type of psychological, weird, strange practice to, but yeah, I just
like
think it's
fear
important.
tactic,
I agree. You said what?
fear tactic.
Yeah, yeah, but I agree with what you're saying. I think that it's important as Americans, as Christians, as people, that yeah, I mean, we should be living lives that regardless of who's in the White House, we have to understand like we still responsible for the lives that we have and
Yeah,
our families and ourselves, and yeah, we have to make things work regardless of whether they're Republican or Democrat,
yeah.
and yeah, yeah, I will say just kind of going back into the whole, uh, what you were saying in regards to just the authority that a lot of the people behind the tech world has. Like I have to say, like when President Trump was removed indefinitely from like all these social media platforms,
Oh
like
yeah.
unanimous, to me, I just thought, wow, this is like frightening. This is frightening
It's
because
exile, like
if there's
from the
any
public
place in the world
discourse.
that we should have free speech and this United States Constitution, and I'm just thinking to myself like this is frightening. This is frightening, and I mean thank the Lord there's other elements where I can listen to and other places where they don't think like these other groups, so they don't censor him. But yeah, I thought it was really sad and very frightening that because I'm thinking if you can remove, unanimously these different groups work together to remove somebody, then they can remove any of us, Yeah, I mean, could you imagine like a world where I don't know, let's say there's a passion that you develop over time, and you're speaking to people, and people are listening to you, and they want to hear what you have to say, and yeah, these groups decide, well, you know what, Tim is actually he's actually demonstrating that he's a leader. He's speaking independently. He's going after his own facts, and we can't influence him. Well, he's a danger. He's a danger now. We gotta get rid of him. So at least, so to me, it was very frightening for that to happen. So, um, I mean, I don't think we should lose heart and things like that. But yeah, I think it's good to know that what's happening and what's aware and be aware of what's happening and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I do believe the government has its role, but yeah, the sinful nature of human beings, we do
Any
that overreach.
system's gonna kind of get corrupt, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and yeah, and it's sad, but yeah, that's what's happening with the nature we have.
Before we get off of like conspiracy theories and stuff, I remember,
Okay.
because it's like super interesting some of that stuff, and I remember like we would have morning workouts for football at like 6 a.m. like spring conditioning. It's gonna be an awful workout, like not awful, but it's good,
Okay.
good, but it's gonna just like it's gonna suck, right?
Yeah.
You're there for a couple hours, you have to wake up at like 5:30, and I would sometimes like just stay up until like 3 or so, just out of like angst and nervousness. And then I remember one time, instead of getting some good sleep that probably would have helped me in the workout, I was up at like 3:30 a.m. figuring out whether or not the moon landing was faked. Like,
Oh, my goodness.
I was like, I know I need some sleep, but did we go to the moon? Like, I was just watching different like random stuff on YouTube and just go, like a YouTube a rabbit hole where I just go down the
Yeah, yeah,
next
I was gonna
recommended,
say,
next recommended. I probably started on some gaming thing and ended up, did we go to the moon? Now, like, and so, yeah,
yeah,
that's,
it's very interesting, Tim, because I noticed that when and maybe it was God just really using me to communicate with people, but I noticed that when I started becoming more open about my faith and confidently sharing, whether I was in a public setting or on social media or doing videos or whatever, I started attracting different types of people, not only Christians, but people who had other beliefs, that were.
yeah,
And so, like, I remember just talking to a guy. I was invited to his home with his girlfriend, and we were talking, and then he, assured me that, Earth is not a sphere; it's actually flat. That NASA has manipulated the
the data,
photos to
yeah,
give the appearance, and I, I just, I didn't even know how to even respond to something like that. But and I can go on and on with the type of things that I've heard from different types of groups and people, but it's fascinating because I almost felt like God just purposefully put me in the lives of these people so I can kind of,
speak some
and with
truth.
the oh yeah, yeah, but it was just very intriguing because I think I heard about the community of people, the flat earthers,
Yeah,
but
yep.
to meet one, very different experience, very different,
I'm
very different.
sure. I bet. Oh
Very
man.
different experience. Very different. It's like, wow, okay, all right, there we go.
Wow. Um, so Elden Ring, yeah. So that one kind of went on a tangent there for a while. No, but
Yeah,
that's
man. Yeah, yeah,
it's great. That's kind of what this is supposed to be, just more natural flowing. Kind of
yeah.
reaching to
That's
all
nice.
these topics, not really like sectioned off. And we really got into
But
like
I like.
a lot there, like
Yeah,
really
yeah.
into like AI and the future we live in, and then some religious aspects of that. Um,
Seriously.
so you released some videos this past week. Oh, hold on, give me. Let's take a little break. Why don't we? Okay. Okay, we're back. How you doing, James?
Man, doing good, doing good. Love this conversation, man. I have to say, I did not expect the different directions
We
we went. I
really
did not expect that to.
we went pretty deep there.
We did, man. We did. We hit some serious stuff.
So something I guess a little bit lighter that we kind of alluded to earlier, what you had talked about, I guess, is the concept of sharing opinions. Especially when you might be ostracized or kind of taken aback from different groups. People might see you different because of sharing an opinion on something, right or wrong, right? And just and
Mhm.
also on the form of a platform like your social media or YouTube or anything else. So I guess kind of talk about that a little bit. How's that been for you, and when you kind of made that decision?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the things I'm gonna say the milestones in my life was just me coming out as a conservative back in 2020. And uh, I for a long time, being in my community, I just, I was a Democrat, and I just thought I didn't even know what that really meant. I just knew that I'm not supposed to be a conservative Republican because that's for the rich white people. That's
Yeah,
what I was told. No one explained to me what their policies or their ideologies were. I just knew that I wasn't supposed to be a part of that because I'm black, or the black and brown community. We just were supposed to be Democrats, like, automatically. And so I just blindly agreed with that, and um, I didn't really bother to do any research in regards to foreign policies and just policies in general with certain candidates. What did they actually believe in, specifically about abortion and all this stuff? And I think a lot of it actually started with Donald Trump, to be honest with you. When he showed up back in like 2016, and he was running for president, I thought, oh, this is kind of funny,
he
Donald Trump,
appeared
like
out of
he's
the
going to be.
void on a presidential run
Yeah,
from
yeah,
hell. Like he just
yeah.
went
I
for
just thought
it.
it was but I thought it was so silly, like, oh, Donald Trump, right? He's gonna be president, and I
Yeah,
didn't think he was gonna be president. I thought it was a joke, but I was like, man, this, I normally don't watch the presidential debates because they're boring and they're talking about things I don't really care for. But I was like, but I will watch for him because I know he's gonna be funny, like he's the
yeah.
apprentice guy, like, so yeah, you're fired, so yeah, yeah. So didn't know too much about him. I just knew he was in a lot of uh, rap songs, and a lot of black artists, and a lot of people just in general for years. Always loved being around him. He was always, they were at his parties, and WrestleMania, like, you name it, he was everywhere.
That's
Everyone loved Donald Trump. So I'm just
yeah,
like, this guy's like, he's he was just very entertaining. You always thought, but yeah, when he ran for president and actually won, um, I know for the first time I was watching a lot of the things that he was saying and doing, and I thought to myself, wow, this is interesting. Like, he's actually behaving like somebody who actually values the United States. He actually values what it is that we actually represent. And for me, it never occurred to me to actually be happy that I'm an American. I always thought, well, I could have been anywhere in the world, and it's just, I don't know, you just live your life, and but he was one of the sources that really reminded me and a lot of other people that it's a privilege to be born in the United States. It's a privilege to be here and to be protected by the United States Constitution, to have these inalienable rights that can be taken away because we're God's children, and all these different things. And I just watched him over the years, and I just thought, wow. At one point, I just said, I think when um, the virus hit everything, and I seen the division between different communities, and sometimes people of their own household, how they conducted themselves. I almost felt like it was almost a blessing in disguise because it really showed where everyone's mindsets actually were. You had a lot of people that blindly agreed with the government, as we were saying, and they actually seemed to almost treat the government like God. Like, if the government said something, they just blindly agreed, and they didn't
yeah,
need to know any data behind it. They just agreed. And if the government decided to change something, they just agreed with that, and there was no, And then I noticed that there was a lot of these other people that seemed to be a little bit more skeptical, but were interested in finding out their own information. I noticed many of them, not all, were more on the conservative Republican side, and that's what kind of moved me to kind of openly say, wait a minute, okay, I actually support what this guy is saying. He's actually really pushing even Black America to like it's time to like start voting differently. Stop doing the same thing that hasn't worked for your community all this time, and voting for people that every 4 years they're like, I don't know, trying to rile you up about police brutality and all this stuff, and they don't really instill the policies and the changes that will affect your community. Like, it's time for you to do something different. And so, yeah, back in 2020, I'm listening to, there's the George Floyd situation and Candace Owens and all these different communities, arguments and debates, and Donald Trump, and yeah, I realized like I'm a conservative, and so I started expressing that openly. And prior to that, I didn't care to even get into politics. I thought it was always like too complex for me to get into. I didn't think I was smart enough to really get into that at the time.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, that's for the intellectuals to know that stuff. And but I realized that as an American, and more specifically, and more importantly, as a Christian, I do have the responsibility to engage the political discussions about abortion, about immigration, about foreign policies, all these things. Like I have a role in that. I'm not supposed to sit down on the couch and say, okay, let me just look into the sky
Yeah.
and hopefully God will just fix everything. But to be a part of those discussions and to change people's minds, and and I remember one of the first times with God's help, of course, I was talking to a guy who was visiting our country, a German guy, and yeah, I was talking to him about abortion, and he said, well, he's a Christian as well, but he believes that it's important to have those, um, to have abortion available, and he believed in it, he supported it, um, and at the time, like I realized that I had read this really well thought out book of The Case for Life by Scott Klusendorf,
Yeah.
and he really gave a really legitimate argument to argue the value of human life from a scientific standpoint. He's a Christian, but he argued that there's a way to defend human life just from a scientific perspective, and that was something that he really encouraged Christians to do. It's like, yes, we know God doesn't want us to kill human beings. That's in the commandments, the eighth commandment, thou shalt not kill or murder.
Yeah.
But he argued to know how to argue properly, and just systematically have like an argument, from a scientific standpoint. And I remember walking through these steps with this guy, and this guy's intelligent. He's visiting our country. He's in the process of building a company, and all this stuff. So very well versed in politics. His father's a politician. But I talked him out of like abortion.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah, you
yeah,
talked about that in your videos you posted this past weekend, or this
I
past week,
did.
right?
I
Yeah,
did.
we'll
Yeah.
link
And I
those like
thought,
right there or something.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I just thought, wow, this it's very powerful to be able to actually have a legitimate argument and share it with somebody and be able to explain it clearly, and But I started noticing that I could do that with other things as well. And
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah. But just in a general sense, I came out as conservative, and already like a lot of my stuff was controversial to some extent because I was just talking about God. And as
Yeah.
a Christian, like already that's antithetical to what
Hey, whoa,
the
whoa,
Bible
whoa,
brings.
Cody, relax. He's a crackhead, man. He just out of nowhere.
Did somebody pass by or
Yeah,
something?
yeah,
Or?
he was like looking out the window, but yeah, something happened. Anyway, yeah, no, that's interesting. It's definitely something I've kind of realized more
Mhm.
recently this past year. I'm trying to share more thoughts on Twitter and different aspects and through videos
Yeah,
and
you're doing a good
stuff.
job, by the way. You're
Thank
doing a
you,
good
thank
job.
you.
Love your thoughts, man.
But just creating something and writing more and expressing those thoughts, like forming them out completely instead of just a passing glance, a passing thought, and forgetting about it, right? And actually having to present it, but being willing to defend it too, right? Especially something controversial topic like this, and we had countless discussions before we actually came to decide to do this. We were both very skeptical. Like we both wanted
Yes.
to do it because we love talking to each other about it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
but you've always been way more confident with the way you talk about these sensitive subjects, and I've always been reserved. I'm like, I don't know. Because I feel some things, but I'm not. I don't always. I'm very empathetic to the other side a lot of times. And what's interesting, you bring up 2020 when all that stuff happened, because I think I was talking to you about maybe some of the inverse and how I saw myself, I guess, mainly as conservative, but like a more like middle right conservative, and then all this stuff happened in 2020 in the summer, and we both kind of talked about how we were just kind of going through different resources and looking at different things, and I think
Yeah. Yeah.
it was like a hard day for everybody. I think on social media that couple days, like it was just tough to see all the stuff you would see on your phone. But as far as like sharing ideas and discerning what to talk about, right? There's like the entertainment part, there's like entertainment, philosophy, and religion, right? It's all because everyone likes the entertainment part, but there's real problems and things that happen in society, and there's interesting discussions. Like I thought the AI thing was great, right? Um,
Mm.
so it's important to share these things, and what really helps me is like seeing some of my friends, people that I went to school with, people that I've had great conversations with, or just that I have meaningful friendships with. They've reached out, afterwards, being like, "Oh, that's the message I needed to hear today, man. Thank you," or "Keep up the good
Nice,
work,"
man.
and different things like that. And it's really humbling and it's really great to hear, and I'm very thankful for that. That's kind of my whole goal, is to share these ideas, and if
Mhm.
someone has been there before, if I've been there before, and I can share what I've learned from that experience, by all means I want to share it. I want to help you through that time. For instance, I have one of my really close buddies. He's going through a breakup right now, and it's pretty tough on him. And I don't have all the experience in the world with that. Me and my wife were really strong for like 8 years. We did have some troubles before we actually
Of course.
tied the
Mhm.
knot, but
Yeah, yeah.
like we got through them and stuff. So but what I can share from my perspective is, different things we've been through. And so just trying to help people out, and him specifically through that, has been interesting and a challenge, and sharing a message of self-respect and self-love, and acknowledging
Interesting.
who you're spending your time with and who is deserving of your time, you know.
I like that. I like that.
So yeah, there's plenty of things to get into, and that's why I think it's good to just be brave about it. And if you have something to say, if you have something important to share, if it can help even one person you can think of, post it, share it, let people know. You'd be surprised the kind of reach back you get. You know?
That's interesting you bring that up because, one of the reasons why, it's funny because at first I thought to myself, well, when the beginning of this year, when I transitioned into finally doing the YouTube thing, I thought to myself, okay, should I still do videos on Instagram and Facebook, and how would that look? Like, what if I'm just talking about the same things? But it seems like you said, there's always things to talk about. And one of the things I love doing is making reference to actual experiences that I've had. And it seems
Yeah.
like those are just endless and they're always happening. Like I've had experience just the last 7 days. It's fascinating how there's so much more material um, to share as you just keep going. I think the only real challenge is it's one thing when you're saying these nice messages that are encouraging to people, but when you say something that is um, that's honest and truthful, that almost aligns with the reality that of course God has established in His Word, that's when there can be a bit of a challenge. Is when you stand for something that aligns more so with God. So people will applaud you if you say you're a Christian, if you love Jesus, because there's plenty of people that'll say they love Jesus also. The Mormon loves Jesus. Those in Islam love Jesus. Jehovah Witness, Roman Catholics, everyone loves Jesus. Okay, even atheists say, "Oh yeah, Jesus is cool, good teacher." So no one has an issue with that. But if you say something in the nature of, well, the only way that you're going to get to heaven is through Jesus Christ, who has revealed Himself in Scripture, the biblical Jesus, that's going to be an issue. That'll be an issue. And that's what's really going to test what type of person you really are. Because it's one thing for people to applaud you when you're saying a nice message that's universal and it's kind of safe.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to say, "Hey, we love Jesus too," or, "Oh yeah, that's good. If you want to do that, that's cool, and I'm going to do my thing, but I don't support that, but I'm support you." So that's one thing. Um, but yeah, to tell somebody, hey, I don't know if I shared this with you, but I had an encounter with a gentleman that, every time I was visiting him and his girlfriend, he would try to lecture me about the Bible. About
Yeah.
a little over 2 years ago, he decided that he wanted to adopt religion, and I thought, oh man, it's cool that he's a Christian finally. And then I started listening to him and found out he was not a Christian, but he had more of a different perspective. And I think Hebrew
Black
Israelites.
Hebrew Israelite, right? That you talked about.
Yeah, correct,
Yeah, we
correct.
talked about
Yeah,
that a little bit.
absolutely. And so I was already familiar with some of those practices. But yeah, he decided that he wanted to really push all these different ideas, and I eventually I had to kind of let him know, like after a series of discussions on the phone, and even just there are times in person I have to let him know that. Um, I can't take what you're saying seriously. There's not any credibility behind what you're doing when you're living in sin the way that you are, and you're actually living with your girlfriend. and you're trying to talk to me about God's morality and justice and his ethics, and that's actually like hypocritical, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah, and I would, and when you stand and draw that line in the sand, uh, that is a different test right there. That's when it's like, okay, this is not like kindergarten. This is like you're transitioning into something serious, So I think
Do we
it's a
do we need to be perfect to teach a message?
I'll put it this way. It's one thing if you're using yourself as the standard, but it's something else when you say, well, God said that, not me.
Yeah.
God said it. Yeah. And so that's sort of the issue. And that's always been the issue when it came to like the true church is they didn't say, well, I said it. They always said, well, God said that. And I didn't say that. And that's what, got a lot of people killed. And even over the centuries after the people, the New Testament writers and the apostles passed away, even the early church fathers and people condemned by, even the Roman Catholic faith. It's like, hey, we have this established, hierarchy, and we are going to pray this way. We're going to do things this way, and this is how we're going to interpret the Bible. And some people stepped up and said, well, no, that's not what the Bible teaches. And so, you would have some groups that say, okay, well then, you realize that you're going to be sentenced to death because you're going against what we teach. And these people said, well, I don't care. This is what the Bible teaches. I'm not going to give up what God says just to appease you. You're a human
Yeah.
being. You're going to answer to him too. And it's very interesting because when you read books like the Fox books, Book of Martyrs, when you find out all these different people that died over the years for their faith, you realize that there was something in them that they lost the interest. They lost that fear of dying, either prior to that moment or during that moment. They were not afraid to be set on fire. They were not afraid to be hung. They were not afraid to be drowned. There was something God did to them that I don't know. He was very faithful, and he demonstrated his love towards them, even towards the end. But I'm using an extreme case, but yeah, I mean, just like somebody like I don't know, President Trump or whoever else. Like if you say too many things that you're declaring God's truth, you will be blocked on
Yeah.
YouTube, and you will be blocked on Twitter, and you will be blocked. There's certain things that are just not allowed, and so some people will say, okay, let me just play it safe and let me just dilute my message, and other people say, well, I don't really care about that because we're all going to answer him one day, So
That's
um,
super
yeah,
interesting that you bring up the martyrs because that's actually one of the like biggest reasons why I like believe in this in Christianity so much is because there are these people all throughout history that have died for this cause, for Jesus Christ's name. And you hear all the stories about how effective torture is and Spanish Inquisition and all that and getting people to tell you what you want to hear regardless of its truth. And these people went through, barbaric tortures, and all of them, died and would rather die than even give
yeah,
up his name, And that's going from the apostles who, had rejected Jesus 3 times, and different things like that. Had
yeah,
they had
yeah,
already
even,
set precedents of like in situations they're not gonna stand by him, but after the resurrection and him going to see these people, it's there's no more question, that whatever
correct,
they have seen, whatever experience they had, led them to
correct,
be so forthright in their faith in Jesus Christ that they were willing to die and face any consequence to ensure their place, right? That they're doing the right thing. They
yeah,
don't care for
yeah,
this worldly interaction.
hmm
So I can't justify in my head, I can't find a good reason why someone would go through all that and die for that principle unless they believed with every fiber of their being that it was true.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you bring up a good point, Tim. It's one thing to everything is hypothetical or things are being spoken about in regards to heaven and the new body and the new earth. But yeah, but for a group of people to see this man die, and then 3 days later he's walking around and he even shows the marks. That's how you know. Oh, this is actually legit.
Yeah.
This is real. This is actually so we don't actually have to fear, And history tells us that maybe you probably know this or maybe you don't, but even when it was time for Peter to die in the first century, his only concern was he didn't want to die the same way as Jesus. So when he was being crucified, he insisted and requested to be turned upside down so he can die a different way. He didn't want to die the same way as Jesus. He didn't feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, and yeah, and just to think about that, like his concern is this: he didn't want to model the death of Jesus because he didn't think he was worthy of that. That
Uh-huh.
was his only concern, not of dying, you know, not of dying. It's like he already knew that was coming. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting, and yeah, it really demonstrates that there has to be something behind this. If Christianity is that only faith that when it comes to uh, other world religions and other communities and other countries, the Bible is being withheld from being used in public settings, and you're not allowed to say Jesus' name in certain prayers in certain organizations and groups and stuff like that. In certain parts of the world, if you say that you're any other faith, they're okay with that. But if you're a Christian, that's a death sentence. Unless you recant that you are a Christian and things like that, which any devout Christian knows that that's not an option. It's
Yeah.
not an option, not at all. So yeah, it really shows that there's something behind this. And there's this saying that there's a concern that because we're here in the West and things are a little bit more safer, that a lot of us are not. We're not really as invested, and there's not as many believers and solid believers because we don't know what real conflict is. We don't know how it is to be in China and hide our Bibles and pages. And some people are memorizing books in the Bible because they can't have any documents of the Bible on them, or they'll be killed. So they will memorize entire books, and so it's a completely different thing in different parts of the world. But yeah, yeah. But you bring up a good point. This is something behind biblical Christianity.
That's a fair assessment as far as the kind of coddled, I'll say, lives we kind of live nowadays, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
it's like your
I like
ancestors
that
had to
word.
like fight and like to survive, right? And we're over here like leisurely talking about like movies and stuff, right? So it's just very different lifestyles, but you find that a lot of the same core values are still like relevant today, right? With people interaction and the way to live your life and these guidelines. And I'm going through, Bible cover to cover, and you recommended, as long as a new Christian, you should go to the New Testament. There's certain things in there that are more relevant that'll help you as new Christians, right? But I'm stubborn. I'm like, no, I want to cover to cover. I want to go from the old stuff to the new stuff. To my own detriment in some cases with the more monotonous readings, but even in there, it's these building blocks of life and like models of how you should live your life, and not everything's relevant today, but there's stuff there that's still that you can take, and there's little messages and nuggets of knowledge and wisdom that you can pull out and implement in today's world. Not just the Ten Commandments, but
Yeah,
other things as
yeah.
well. It's talking about respecting your spouse and everything, and how to treat and how to deal with like rebellious youth and stuff, and all the
I was just thinking about that. Oh yeah,
yeah. There's some definitely
some
some
rough stuff.
yeah,
Some rough
yeah,
stuff.
some rough punishments. But what it was saying was that like there's these presented these extreme punishments as deterrents, right? Deterrents. And never in scripture was there any example of them actually going through with a lot of these laws
Correct.
because they didn't happen, right?
Correct. Correct.
So yeah, there's lots to pull from there, and just to kind of meditate about where we came from as a species and how we all the stuff we've been through, and you got to kind of not just be blindsided by like what's in front of you, tunnel vision of like your time and everything's relevant now, but see how it connects to history and see how it connects to things we've been through in the past, and because history repeats itself, you see this all the time.
Yeah. In
And
many ways, absolutely.
again, getting pessimistic with how the government's going and other stuff, and like if America's been around a while, and all these other really good societies kind of started to deteriorate a little bit, but
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not really point of this podcast. Doom saying. There's always, I think there's, as long as there's strong leaders and strong men and people that can have some faith, not just in God but in uh, the sense of like being a leader for a community. I think we'll everything will be okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the emphasis we have in the, I'm going to say more so in the Reformed community, is that because we understand the Bible teaching that God is the one that raises up leaders, He's the one that raises up Christians. Anything that He needs for people to be, He will do that. He will do that. Like even if He Um, I'll use myself as an example. Maybe that'll help. But I mean, 20 years ago, it's like I just wanted to play my video games and be left alone, and I didn't care about voicing my thoughts about things publicly and stuff like that. It wasn't until later on with MySpace and I transitioned to Facebook and I started becoming a little bit more open about that. And then, but even then, I was not okay with talking to people who were atheists or because I kept thinking, man, they're going to hit me with science and they're going to hit me with philosophy and that's going to be intimidating. But I feel like over time, it was fascinating, but it was like God taking the time at my own pace to instill these things uh, piece by piece and reinforcing these things that I started to learn over time. And I realized, like, wow, God is so faithful. Like, if He wants you to do something, He's going to give you the tools
Yeah.
over time to give you what you need. He's going to give them to you. And, one of my female friends, I was chatting with her, I think sometime last year, and she's somebody that I also identifies as a Christian, but she really emphasizes the uh, just education and things like that. I think she's aiming for her master's right now, and I think she possibly wants to explore some other things. And I can tell that with people like her, and I'll say like people like you, she has a different perspective than someone like you. Like you understand the significance of education, but you don't equate education as God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't think, okay, now that you have this education, now life can be perfect. Now that you have this document, and for her, I can tell by the way she expresses herself, she actually believes that. She believes that the that some type of schooling and getting that certificate, getting that degree, getting that that established is somehow equated to the promised land. Like everything's just going to be fine, but you have to get this degree or you have to go to school for a certain so you can obtain whatever it is that she feels success is or whatever.
Well,
Um,
I mean, not to cut you off, but like that's kind of a product of generationally what we've been taught.
I
Uh,
would agree. Would agree with you.
yeah, it's
I would
kind of
agree.
like the parents and like for a long time, I'd say more so maybe your generation than mine. Mine is kind of teetering, and even the future ones are learning more and more
Yeah.
that maybe it's not the best thing to always
Oh yeah.
go college route. But for decades, it was like to be successful at all,
Yeah. Yeah.
get
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
degree,
Yeah.
right? No
Yeah.
question.
I have aunts that are still reciting that, and they're like 80 years old, and they still think that's the promised land.
Yeah.
And yeah, one of the things I was bringing up to my female friend about this because I didn't want to discredit like education and things like that. I think it has its use. I think that there are some people it works out for very well. It opens up doors that a person wants to pass that a person wants to venture into. So yeah, I'm all for it. Um, but one of the things I was trying to help her understand, and this brings us to the book of Acts, chapter 4, I believe it's verse 13.
Oh, it's like a
Um,
superpower. Impressive.
yeah, believe me, it takes a lot of. Well, honestly, there are certain things that stands out to me that I know I'm going to need.
Yeah.
So I'll force myself to memorize this stuff.
Yeah.
Like for example, I know for example how important education is to some people. Like some people believe education equates to the promised land. So I committed to this verse because I thought it was very significant. And the idea behind this verse is that the Pharisees were challenged by they were confronting Peter and John, in the book of Acts. So this is the early stages of the church, the first century church. Jesus is already gone. He's already, ascended back into heaven. He's gone. He's brought the Holy Spirit. So now everyone, all believers are now instilled with the Holy Spirit. So they have a boldness. They're strong. They're confident, and they're not afraid of death or anything like that. And so uh, in the Bible verse, it says that the Pharisees took notice that although Peter and John were not learned men, okay, so that was showing like, hey, they didn't go to school, they're regular guys, regular folk, you
Fisherman.
know. Yeah, yeah, there you go, yeah. Um, but they took notice, the Bible says, that they had been spending time with Jesus. It was the way that they carried themselves. He could tell that they whatever he had, they have it too. They have it too, And I was helping my friend understand that, it's one thing to have education and trying to succeed in the things of this world. If you have good intentions, hey, more power to you. But that doesn't necessarily equate to one's spiritual life. That's something that God instills in a person. And I was just reminding her that even the Pharisees who had this prestigious schooling and this background and this education, and everyone, every time they're roaming around, people are kissing their hand, and every time they speak, everyone wants to hear what they have to say because they feel like these people are that middleman between God and themselves. But even the Pharisees knew, even after Jesus died and he's been killed, but they took notice that these men were different. That even though they didn't have that same education as themselves, that these men spoke boldly, that they were actually they demonstrated that they were walking with Christ.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I think it's important to make that distinction, and both can be important. But yeah, our spiritual lives is not based on a document, or it's not based on experiences as well. There's some people who have tried to lecture me and say, well, hey, James, I've been in 10 relationships and you haven't been in barely, one or two. Like my thoughts are more credible than you. And to me, I have to politely share them. Well, doesn't that show evidence that you didn't actually know what you were doing? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that doesn't, I don't know. It's like 10 times or whatever, it's like, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's up for debate, but yeah, that's, I don't know. But yeah, it's very fascinating. But I have learned that over time, I was not very open to having these discussions with anybody because I thought it was very uncomfortable. I don't want to say these things that can be offensive to a person, but I started realizing that when you truly, genuinely love people, you do tell them and you do warn them and you do let them know that, hey, I know that you have this lifestyle or whatever, but this is antithetical to what the Bible teaches, and you're going to give an account to God on the day of judgment if you continue this path. You have to come to Christ. You have to come to Christ.
Yeah.
There is no other option. You don't have any other option. It's time to bow the knee and come to Christ. Because he doesn't invite you like the modern church says. He commands you.
Yeah.
He commands.
Yeah. With the, Bible, evidence study Bible you gave me, I'm reading all this Ray Comfort's notes and everything, and different people he references, talking about how there's a lot of Jesus loves you type of evangelism, right? And it's while it's true, but it's also like you could be lulling people into a false sense of security if you don't start with the law and the Ten Commandments, what's just, and proving to people like nobody's perfect, right? We're all sinners and we all need to recognize that, and that's the first step.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's so true. I love that you know that, man. That's awesome.
I'm learning stuff, man.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
That's awesome. It's interesting because I would love to be present for you to, I don't know, for someone to share something that's the opposite of that, and I wonder like how you would respond. And,
well, okay, so yeah, and I've thought too. I want to start evangelizing more, just being able to defend my thoughts. And I've talked to you about this. Like, there's certain things I'm all in on, and certain things I'm still trying to wrestle with, right? And I know,
Sure.
I do believe like the Bible is true and everything, but that comes with like, the whole, everything I've learned in the past 20 something years about the theory of evolution and everything, and Genesis. And I've talked to you how I'm still going through that and trying to look for all sorts of resources on that. And I'll look at like, talks between an atheist and then a Christian or any types of people, right? So just trying, yeah, a bunch of food for thought as far as all those topics, but I was actually, with my grandpa Lolo, we were having a discussion before we came back to Illinois after Christmas, and I was talking to him about, he said he was religious, but he's struggling in his head. So he's fine, and he thinks God is there, but he just at times will think like, why, if he is there, why is there all this suffering and stuff, right? And so I was thinking like, oh, I know that's a question in the Bible that I can look up right now. And I did, and so that was kind of, I feel like my first real attempt to kind of express my faith and like the way I see things, and it was kind of met with certain things, like, history is told by the victor, and how can you know that it's not just a bunch of stories that were kind of like told from not the true perspective? It might be mostly truth, but some of it right, false.
Yeah.
Brought up like the Dead Sea Scrolls and how that comparison kind of shows us a lot of the Bible translations were largely accurate except for just vernacular, how to say it, right? Largely accurate to the main story at least, right? And then basically the whole concept of suffering and everything is our original sin, right? He created everything perfect, and our original sin created like the butterfly effect, huge
Okay.
overlapping
Yeah,
effect of
yeah,
like
yeah. That's a nice
why,
way to say it. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
why there's
Yeah.
evil in the world. And people that are like, oh, well, why doesn't God stop it? Why does He allow that? And it brought up the question of like, should God, like, in a society, do we stop people before they commit crimes, or do we punish people afterwards? You know, and is it just to, if you know someone is going to commit a crime, is it just to stop them by any means necessary before that
Yeah. Yeah.
happens? You know, and vastly majority, I think most people would say no, it's not okay. You know, people have to pay for what they've done, not for what they're going to do, because you don't know. Um,
That's so fascinating, Tim. There's a movie concept with
the
Tom
Minority
Cruise about that.
Report, right?
Report. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. That's
I
very fascinating.
I haven't seen it, and then I know it's also referenced in Winter Soldier, how Hydra's like taking over.
Yeah, yeah.
They're trying to take out all their enemies before they're even enemies.
Hmm.
So yeah, that concept's kind of it comes up a couple times, and I think majority of the time that's the wrong answer, right?
Correct. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
That's, that's so fascinating. Yeah, I was gonna just say that and I don't know if it was just the natural way that I've operated, or I don't know if it was just over time, God really instilled this in me. But I became very hungry to learn how to defend the Bible. It
yeah,
was just something that was cultivated in me, and so I found myself not only early in my walk with the Lord, watching constant YouTube videos of men and women of the faith, evangelizing, and I've showed you and your family a few Ray Comfort videos, and I really recommend to go over some of those. And a lot of times, I think he knows our attention spans are not the best, so his stuff is always under an hour. Some are like
yeah,
under 40 minutes, and they're very, very well done. But he always communicates with people from the natural realm, like he always says, and then switch over to, spiritual things and things like that. But I noticed that confidence of speaking on things uh, really makes a difference when you familiarize yourself with enough information on how to, and then one of the things that Ray always brings up is most people operate the exact same way. They're going to say the same stuff. So once you familiarize yourself with that kind of stuff, like it's almost like it's very easy. Like I know if you and I are talking to somebody who's rejecting God, first thing they're going to say is, "Oh, okay, well, where are the dinosaurs then, huh? Or how do we get the Bible? Or where's Noah's Ark?" Like, so eventually you can actually find out how to answer those things.
yeah,
You can learn how to answer, and my recommendation is not to dwell on them too long, because what happens is, you get sidetracked and they want to get away from the real thing, which is they don't like God because they like their adultery or their fornication or their lying or stealing or cheating. They like that. So they don't want to talk about who God is. Because they already know there's a God. That's Romans 1:20. Everyone knows there's a God. There's
yeah.
no atheist.
The
There's,
the the problem is a lot of people don't can take the Bible as the fact and everything that we as Christians take it as, or at least most people as Christians should take it as. We
agreed,
see it as a
agreed.
primary source versus like other people might not see it as credible at all, right?
Yeah,
A work
yeah,
of a work of fiction in some cases, some might say, but a lot of
yeah.
times like they'll try to stick to scientific roots or what they can prove and what can be repeated with scientific theory, right? But we don't have the answer for everything, and that's I think that there's still unexplainables, and filling in the
Mhm.
gaps with this concept of faith, is just completely absent to them. You can look back into the how the universe started, but the whole Big Bang theory, it's like something has to come from that, right? Something has to start everything like that. So there's a lot of theories like that people get into, but you can't. There's no
True.
way we can't know everything. So it's if there's skepticism there, like why is this completely off the table?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting you say that, because one of the reasons why I was drawn to Ray Comfort's ministry was he was always recording himself talking to atheists. And to me, I was afraid of atheists before. I was afraid of them because I kept thinking science is going to get me, or their philosophies are going to get me, and I'm not that smart and all that stuff. And I watched this very humble, simple man um, really just communicate with their conscience. Like he would always start off in the natural realm talking about things that they can relate to. And he always made that transition with every conversation. And it's a system. It's a perfect system. And I really recommend you and Julie just sit down and watch
Sure.
one of these. Yeah, yeah, really. And you can do a short one. But it's so interesting how a person can start off very confident, very arrogant about, they don't believe in the Bible, all this stuff. But it's almost like 99% of the time, everyone it becomes very convicted as soon as God's law is presented. As soon as God's law is presented, everyone is exactly the same. It doesn't matter if they're a physicist, it doesn't matter if they're a doctor or lawyer. Everyone becomes the same type of person as soon as you present God's law because they have a conscience that knows what he's saying is right. When he
Yeah.
says, well, hey, have you ever lied? Have you ever cheated? Have you ever had sex outside of marriage? It's like you can tell they're like, oh, you see their eyes, you can see it on their face. They're completely stripped of any self righteousness they have. They're completely stripped, you know. But it's fascinating because I started getting into learning about atheism and the evolutionary theories and stuff like that. And I have, I'm just run through them real quick. But uh, I remember Kent Hovind, and this is another guy I think you're familiar with. You went through a lot of his material early in your, some of his lectures. Kent
Oh
Hovind,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I learned from him, and he's somebody who loves science, and he still does YouTube stuff, and I recommend people check him out. But he shared that the evolutionary concept has six definitions, not one. It has six, and I didn't know that, And he says most of the time when he's communicating with an atheist, and they say, "Well, let's talk about evolution," he says, "Okay, which one do you want to talk about?" Most of the time, right, even there, like they're already completely lost because they don't even know that there are different versions of evolution. So the first one is cosmic evolution.
Uh-huh.
That's the beginning of time, space, and matter, and things like that. That's essentially the Big Bang. The next is chemical evolution. That's all the elements and hydrogen. That's things coming together. There's stellar evolution. That's the planets, the stars coming together. Okay, so there's different definitions. All right, so we're on the third one. Organic evolution. That's life. Being created and stuff like that. There's macroevolution. That's like the animals and human beings being established. And then there's, of course, and macroevolution is also like animals turning into other animals. And then you have the final one, which is microevolution, and that's the only one that actually has some type of uh, legitimacy because that is, human beings kind of changing a little bit over time because of their environments or animals. You may have certain animals that you drop them off in a cold climate, and over time they start building up a resilience over time. Their family and their lines start becoming more hairy, so they can survive that environment, that climate. Um, or it might be human beings. You have human beings with maybe Adam and Eve was uh, maybe fair skinned, maybe they were kind of in the middle, and you have different human beings because of the Tower of Babel migrated to Africa, and you have some that will have develop more complexions like myself, while others from more colder climates and they start developing blonde hair and different things. So that's the only one that has some type of legitimacy. But the first five are all purely religious. Not one
Yeah.
of them demonstrates evidence. Not one of them. Not one has evidence for, what it is that they claim. You know, that you actually have to take all five of them by faith. You have to just accept that there was a big bang, there was a something that an explosion, cosmic explosion that happened and created our four seasons and all these different animals and this organized life that we live here on Earth. That we have oxygen and we have all these things that work well together for us. A system of the universe with the sun and the distance. It's not too far to make us like freezing cold, but it's not too close to kill us. And everything is like supposedly by accident everything took place. So it's really kind of like one of the things that I enjoy about Ray is when he meets an atheist and they say, "Oh, well, I'm an atheist," and he will say, "Oh, okay, so you believe that nothing created everything, which is a scientific impossibility."
Uh-huh.
And usually, like when he hits them with that, they have to kind of think it over, like, "Oh, I actually do think that. I do
Yeah.
think that nothing created everything, which is irrational." I mean, there's not one example of chaos and explosion creating order. There's no examples of that, so it's kind of silly. It's kind of foolish. It's and I'm not trying to put down anybody who believes that, but yeah, it's like that's something that a person would retreat to if they don't want God. It's like I'll just buy into this because now I can do whatever I want. I don't. There's no authority over me. So yeah, it's very easy to. It's fun to sin and enjoy sin for a season. But yeah, but yeah, but
Yeah,
I
there,
say all that just to say that yeah, I'm not bothered by speaking to atheists or anybody else of other faiths because there's nothing for them to stand on. There's
yeah.
nothing literally to stand on.
There,
Not when you ask questions.
Now when you're purposeful and you're knowledgeable about what you're asking and you can back it up, there's a whole lot of resources I'm still trying to get into because I look at all that stuff, but I try to find counter arguments from atheists or anything, right, directed at that. There's a
So
whole bunch of stuff, resources on YouTube or anything. Just I encourage you guys, like, do your research, like, look and stuff, follow your heart really, because what happened with me is, like, to get a good baseline, it was just stop trying to control everything, right, and just like let humble yourself and just follow the path that God lights up for you. And it's very evident in kind of what I can see throughout my life is like you just have different signs and everything more than coincidence, right? It could be coincidence, but it's a lot of coincidences to happen, right? Just little symbols and people like interacting with you, and like a couple of different times. And I was talking to you know a family relative about it, and it's just very humbling because you could see some things as coincidence, but like three people coming to talk about you the same thing in the same week, all it's kind of like it's all kind of directing you in a certain path, right? And it feels right in your heart too. You just follow that path, and if it feels right, you are likely doing the right things. So I used to try and control everything and make it the way I wanted it, but just let go of that and follow just where your heart leads you, and that'll kind of take you to the right place. And always, but don't never give up your critical thinking. Always kind of be questioning things and make sure because if you believe something but you can't back it up, right? If you don't know an answer to a question, like then you're not. How can you can be persuaded? So for sure, really kind of find a foundation of your belief and make sure that it's strong. It can withstand attacks, and it can just be sturdy. So that was a good kind of section for our religion, I think. We're getting kind of long here, so before we kind of close up, we had some questions. I always try to put out some questions, or not. We don't put out questions, but I always ask anybody that's listening or anybody that sees us on social media, anything. If you guys have anything you want us to talk about, hit us up. There's links down below. Our
mhm.
email for the podcast specifically, that's the preferred channel. Write us an email, we can read it and even read it live for you guys. But for now, while we're still building, asking people on social media and everything, um, I got a couple. One was from a buddy of mine on Twitter, Mark Anthony, um, and it was about morning routines. So yeah, he was interested in if we have morning routines, kind of how that I guess plays in an aspect of our days. So what about you, James? You got a morning routine? What do you kind of do?
Yeah, other than the basics of, of course, showering and brushing my teeth and the hygiene stuff. I do like
So you're,
to
you're a morning
use
shower guy. Interesting.
well, yeah, actually, it depends on my work day. So, for example, there are times when I have classes, let's say in the afternoon. So I may actually, I usually want to take a shower, at minimum once, a day. Sometimes I have to do a second one, but yeah, let's say for example I have classes in the afternoon, so I will wait until uh, late morning or the early afternoon before I shower, so I can within an hour I can be heading out and feel kind of refreshed. But yeah, typically actually use my it's funny because we're talking about Ray Comfort a lot, but I do have a devotional that I read, and it's just usually one page a day. It covers the entire um, year, just and it's always like a excerpt from Book of Proverbs. It's really cool. It's from Ray Comfort's ministry, Living Waters, and yeah, I'm always big on at least reading one page a day. And yeah, yeah. I mean, I like to, after I read that, just kind of collect my thoughts and talk to God. Just to minister to me about what I've read, and just kind of think about anything that's on my mind that is troubling me, or difficulties, or even the people in my life. I may pray for Tim and something that he shares with me that is on his mind, or
Aw.
my mother, my family. Like yeah. But I mean, yeah, nothing too complex. I do like smoothies as well. I make vegetables sometimes, and fruit smoothies, sometimes different combinations, oatmeal. So I'm big on using that as well. But yeah, nothing too complex.
Yeah, for me, it's because going through all this kind of self-improvement stuff, there's a huge, like, I guess, manosphere thing on Twitter or just kind of anywhere, right?
Okay.
Where you can just see all these people doing crazy things, like David Goggins and other people, just really like stay, like their whole thing, stay hard, right? Just
Yeah.
get your butt moving, and so there's a bunch to look at, and a bunch of people to compare yourself to. Don't do it, right? That's one of the worst things you can do. You just gotta improve yourself, just be better than who you were yesterday by 1%. And you're fine. You'll be somewhere great in a couple months. So for us, it's also been for me more so my morning routine, but also trying to get the family in the right direction, right? Because I'm a leader now. It's not just about me anymore. It's about my family too.
Hmm.
So one of the things that has stuck with like 100% success rate, because it's all we're trying new things, right? Not everything's going to work all the time, but one of the things that has stuck is waking up, and the first thing I do every day, or at least once a day, reading the Bible. And that oftentimes is with my baby daughter Aurora. We'll wake up, and mom usually takes care of her more so during the wee morning hours if she needs it, and she might need to sleep in a little bit. So I'll take Aurora in the morning, and we'll read the Bible, and that's been one of the best activities I've done. It helps so much with my day, and just the reflection of the sacred text, and then also just hanging out with your daughter. Like it's pretty great. It's pretty humbling and pretty awesome. So that's one of my favorite things I get to do.
Nice,
And
man.
after that, she'll usually be down for a nap sometimes. And I'm actually in a unique place right now. I have to have a job right now. I spent like 8 or so years playing college or playing football, and I'm in the unique position where they're paying my bills until a couple months, this one
Yeah.
semester. So yeah, 8 years of hard blood, sweat, and tears, and I get a couple months ride, right? I don't have to get a job yet. Um, but yeah, so I don't have a 9 to 5 right now. Right now I'm just going to school. I'm trying to do a lot of my own projects as far as this podcast and trying to write more on Twitter and in other spaces, just trying to build something for myself online for me and my family. But so I'm working on that. As far as that, I don't have time restrictions normally. It's kind of flexible, and so I'll do the Bible study, and then sometimes Aurora will be sleeping, and I'll watch a 30-minute episode of some show while she's just rocking her and patting her on the back, and then I'll try to get her down for a little nap, mid-morning nap, uh,
Mm.
and then I'll take the dog out for a walk, bring him back in. Um, I do try typically get a workout after that. Hopefully, Julie's up. Sometimes she'll be up and she'll have coffee while I'm reading to the Bible to her. But typically, we've been trying to do family workouts right in the mornings if we can. We'll take Aurora with us to the gym, and it's pretty funny. She kind of just sits there in the car seat, and she likes watching us like move the weight. She's like, "What are they doing?"
That's
um,
funny.
yeah, yeah, and then we'll listen to like rock music and stuff, and I'm just like rocking out with her the whole time. But yeah, so we'll do that, and then sometimes we'll work out later, just whatever happens we can in the day. Uh, yeah, that's kind of that's the big routine, and then I'll kind of just get to work after that. Typically, I have schoolwork and stuff I got to
Nice.
do. Yeah,
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah,
yeah,
I like this question. It was more, more on the lighter side. I like
yeah.
that.
We kind of
I think
delved into
I need,
some big topics
yeah,
this
we need more
time,
questions like that. I like that. I
some
like that.
lighthearted stuff. Yeah, I appreciate the question. Something else that was another question I got, maybe not as lighthearted, right?
Oh,
Just
well,
give me 1 second as I pull it up here.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, go for it.
okay. The thing I was least ready for about fatherhood.
Oh, uh-oh.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear this one.
That's another good one. It's an introspective one. Least ready for about fatherhood. It's it's interesting. I guess I thought it would be more of a burden. Um, and that might just be because I'm blessed enough to have a great wife that takes great care of her and us, and we're a really good teamwork unit, family unit. Um,
Yes, you
and
are.
I would
Yes, you are.
I would encourage anybody who's trying to find a wife and in your relationships, just look for that stuff. You may think you're not dating, you're just dating around, but you don't know who you'll interact with, right? You don't know if you'll find your soulmate. So just always kind of be presentable and on the lookout for qualities and traits that you would want in your future spouse. So teamwork is definitely one of them, and same, goals and everything for a family is one of them as well. But so we work out really well as a team, and it's honestly not as hard as I had thought it would be. Raising Aurora, and like I said, that could just be because maybe Julie's taking her most of the time. She does watch her. She's watching her now, right? And while I do homework and stuff and different class work, and she doesn't have a job right now, so she has the time to be a full-time mom. It's a really blessed time in our lives, honestly. Very happy we get to
Very, yeah.
stay here
It's a
these
good
couple
deal,
months.
man.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Stay here these couple months and be at-home parents. So she and I would always heard not stigmas, but just like my mindset works is if it's like this is a bad way to say it, but I assume the worst, so I'm prepared for anything, right? And
Oh,
I'm
oh yeah.
pleasantly surprised when it's not that bad. I'll do because I hate conditioning and everything. And for football, we get on the line, and I'm like, okay, we're doing 12 gassers, like the worst thing I can think of, and then it's only like 4, it's only like 8, right? And it's like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Um, Even though I'm gasping
Funny.
for air, right? So I always, as far as like a hard worker sense, I always try to think like that. And I always would see and hear people talk about all the time that like, oh, kids are so hard and stay up all night and it's, um, but it's like I do that for school anyway. I'll stay up all night on my own accord looking up conspiracy theory videos. So it's like if I can do that before a morning workout, I think I'll be fine. And that's kind of been the case. There have been some not sleepless nights, but just sporadic nap type nights instead of a full sleep. That happens, and she does need a lot of attention. She needs gentle care. And what we've asked people we've talked about that are parents, like, what do you suggest? And one guy said, kids just need someone to love them, right? Like, just be nice to them. They can't really talk yet, and the only way they can talk is to cry. So just be aware of that, and just show them love
Hmm,
and compassion.
that's good.
Yeah, no, it's really good,
Yep.
and my lighting's kind of gone to crap here. We're almost done, I swear.
Mine was kind of shifting too. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so it's been easier, and I guess the thing I expected least, or that, yeah, was just I expected it to be just really hard, and it's been a blessing. I love the time I have with my wife and my kid, and I really, cherish all the moments I get with her. And what's funny is, because mom obviously is, breastfeeding her, and so most of the feedings go to her. And so, the night she was born in the hospital, it was her first diaper change that came up. And we both looked at each other, and I was thinking in my head like, whoever says yes here will have that responsibility the whole time. I was like, we were both like looking at each other like, uh, and eventually I was like, I'll get it. And she was like, so I changed the diapers.
Yeah. I have to say that when you guys came through and visited the last time you guys visited, it was so nice to just see how you guys worked very well together. It's very inspiring because as a guy that is always sharing a Christian perspective when it comes to relationships and marriage, and like it's one thing to talk about these things. It's one thing to say what the Bible says about it, but it's so refreshing to actually see it actually happening. Like it's almost like you're not trying to impose on your wife's not trying to impose on you, but you guys are also just working together. And it was really nice just seeing you take initiative. I mean, there are times when you and I were just talking, and it just seems like every, I don't know, hour, or every 2 or 3 times an hour, like you were just changing that diaper. You were just changing it. Like I just remember, like one time I was like, man, it's been like 4 or 5 hours we've been talking, during one of your, times we were just talking. And yeah, I think you could have, changed the baby like, I don't know, 10 times, like you were just going through the, but but you understood that it needed to happen,
Yeah.
and it was just really nice how you took initiative. You didn't can't like, hey, sweetie, like
Yeah.
you just yeah, it was really nice to see, the husband taking initiative like that, and that's really what a lot of us what we're talking about when it comes to Christ is Christ, loving and protecting his church. He's serving his church. So that's
Yeah, no.
exactly what.
There's a natural urge to serve my wife and help her out with any like I'm always very conscious about like cuz she does primarily take care of her like she and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
it must be like a mother and daughter like father's mother role, right? I mean, she's just
Mhm.
naturally more inclined to like hold her and want to just hold her all the time and be with her, and where I'm like I love her and I love holding her and it's like endorphins all the time, but I
Understood.
can't do it forever. Like I want to put her down after a while, and Julie will sit there on the recliner for hours at a time just holding her all day.
Really?
She's creating a monster. She needs to be stopped. But um no, but so it's kind of shows the differences, right? And so because she's more the primary caretaker, I always am proactive to think, how can I make her day easier? What can I do for her? I've learned how to use the French press. I don't drink coffee at all, but I've learned it's something I can do to make her life easier and help her get out of bed is make her coffee. Um,
Nice.
so things like that, and then also I figure like she's doing so much for the baby, I can do diapers. Like it's not a
Yeah.
problem. I joke because I was caring for my uncle Frank there with you. I lived with you guys there for that whole spring, 6 months before we got married, and I was changing
Ooh.
diapers then. So I was joking that my uncle Frank got me ready for my baby girl. Yeah,
Yes, you were, man. You did, yeah, you did a really good job, man. You were very consistent, and that's so funny. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
it's about almost 3 hours here. Been a long one. And like we said, people, you guys can listen and watch. I try to put different formats out for you guys. Get different shorter videos with segments. You don't have to consume the whole thing. We love the guys that do. We love the guys that don't. Do your thing, however
Yeah,
you
yeah,
want to
yeah. Yeah,
consume the
either way.
content. All right. Anything else, James?
No, no, actually, I feel very satisfied with our discussion, man. I mean, as usual, it just we went all over the place, but I love how
We
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 touched on
do
some
go
very
all over the place.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I love how when we're on a topic, especially if it's something important to us, man, we really like. I feel like we're very thorough.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, yeah. So I appreciate that.
All right. Well, James, if you wouldn't mind. Oh wait. Before we do close in prayer, we got all the links, description, as we said before. Everything's gonna be down below. Social medias, Facebook, all that stuff. YouTube channels and Twitch channels, all that stuff.
Sweet.
Things will show up there. I learned how to do that. So
Nice.
yeah, check it all out. All
I
right.
love it.
All
I
right. You
love it.
can close us in prayer, James.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds good. All right, Heavenly Father, once again, thank you for uh, this wonderful relationship between Timothy and I, and all these amazing people that are going to be checking out our video, and just continue to use us as vessels, Lord, to just really instill your truth and your love towards people, for us to address relevant topics that are, just important to people, things that maybe people have questions about, use us to uh, just sculpt and mold people in your image, use us as these vessels, Lord, as you use the disciples, the apostles, and all these people throughout history, and just continue to pour into us, Lord, and just thank you for everything that you have provided in our lives, these wonderful, beautiful blessings that you continuously pour into us, just knowing we don't deserve any of these amazing things, God. And yes, just thank you. Thank you for this opportunity for this podcast. I'm glad we're jumping into this and we're doing this, and we know that this is going to be a success because you're involved, and we're going to continue to glorify you, Lord, as we move forward. In Jesus' mighty name, we both pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right,
All right, James. Thanks for taking the time.
man. Pleasure, brother. Pleasure.
All right, have a good week, buddy. I'll catch up with you next Sunday.
You as well, man. Always a pleasure.
See ya.